6:31 p.m. I'm going to call the Town of Berthoud Board of Trustees meeting to order. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Dower.
Here.
Trustee Grace.
Here.
Trustee Hardy.
Here.
Trustee Hyman.
Here.
Mayor Karspeck, Trustee Stevens, and Trustee Source Sally will be absent this evening.
Thank you. This is our time for citizen participation. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to come and speak to the board and to the public about something that is not on the agenda, we'd be happy to hear from you. Okay, seeing none in the audience, do we have anyone online?
Mayor Pro Tem Dower, we do not.
Okay, we'll close citizen participation. Next is the consent agenda, and these are a group of items that are routine by the town board, and we are enacting with a single vote. However, we will need to amend the agenda to remove item number 5. We will be vacating the public hearing for the second amended and restated service plan for the Turion Metropolitan Districts, the public hearing. And so we will not be discussing this tonight. The public hearing will be rescheduled for after the first of the year. So with that change to the consent agenda, can I have a motion?
Yes.
I move to combine and approve the items on the consent agenda. I'll second it.
All right, we've had Trustee Stevens.
Trustee Grace. There you
Trustee
go.
Grace.
There you go.
And we have a second from Trustee Hardy. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Hyman.
Yes.
Trustee Grace.
Yes.
Trustee Hardy.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dower.
Yes. All righty. Next on the agenda is water treatment plant infrastructure update. And that will be presented by Ken Matthews.
So I'm going to be working off of this PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to be pointing. Can everybody see the cursor move around? Do y'all have that?
You can see the presentation, but I don't see the cursor, Ken.
Darn. Okay, we'll make do. All right, so last week in the study session, Pete talked a lot about water rights. He talked about our paper water portfolio and what we needed to do to secure that for our current water users, future water users, and users that we've through platting and so forth, we've obligated the town to be able to use this water. What I want to talk about tonight is the infrastructure side of that equation. One of the things that Pete talked a lot about was firming the Windy Gap. And so that's going to be kind of the theme, is we have these water rights that we can use, and how are we going to move them to town? How are we going to store them once they get to town? How are we going to treat them? So that's kind of the focus for tonight. The map here. So does everybody see a map?
We only see the opening slide there.
All right. want to, Christine, you want to manually advance these slides? So did it just delay? Did it come through finally?
It's been
It's not on
corrected.
this audience screen.
There we
There we
go. Okay, so what you're looking at here represents, and if you've seen this a bazillion times, nod aggressively, wave me on, and I'll not spend a lot of time explaining what you're looking at. But basically, wonder if this laser. No, that's not gonna work. Basically, what you're looking at there is the pipe system that's bringing water from, on the left-hand side, the Southern Water Supply pipeline into town. And that's one of the issues that we're dealing with right now. We have some engineering analysis and some capital improvements planned for this coming year to deal with the problem. So the problem, you may ask, is what? Well, the problem is as Pete talked about, he kept talking about a 10 CFS number. He talked about all these SFEs, but then he also said we need to be able to move 10 CFS in order to be able to firm up our Windy Gap water rights. Right now, what we're moving through that pipeline is on a typical day 3 to 4, a good strong day 5.5 if we're sending water to the golf course.
So Ken, for the audience, could you just tell them what CFS and SEV?
Okay, all right. CFS is cubic feet per second. That's a volumetric measurement of water. And so we need to move 10 CFS in order to fully utilize our Windy Gap water right that we have. So what we're focusing on is why aren't we able to get more out of that pipeline? We've looked at some basic engineering analysis of that. You got Carter Lake up here and Bertha Reservoir down here. You got a 16-inch and an 18-inch pipe. We should easily be able to do that. Why aren't we? So that's part of the study. Some of the things that we're dealing with that will. No. Thanks. Some of the things that we're dealing with are these appurtenances that are along the pipeline. If you look at the map, you see ARVs represented through those are air relief valves, and this one is the furthest west air relief valve, and that basically is a pipe that's vented to the atmosphere. If we try to push too much water through the pipeline, it starts pouring out of that pipe. The other type of ARV that we have looks like this. It's an old appurtenance, basically the same age as the pipeline itself. What we theorize is going on is these things aren't functioning the way they should. Water is trapped in the pipeline. I don't know if anybody remembered or used to drive a car with a carburetor. It'd get old, your fuel pump's getting tired, it's a hot day, and your car won't start and it vapor locks. Kind of what's happening here. We got air in the line and we can't move as much water as we should through it. So that's one of the problems. Actually, we're out dealing with that now. Our contract operator is assessing these ARVs and has sent me a recommendation on repairing them. What we're going to do once we get those ARVs fixed or replaced is we're going to do a flow test and measure pressure and flow. We're going to cooperate with Northern Water and just get a good basis to correlate what's actually occurring in the field with what we're analyzing with our engineering tools. And then from that, we can look at modifications to that pipeline in order to try to get some more capacity out of that. So I'm very confident that that existing pipeline will be able to, do what we need to do from the standpoint of these ARVs to get the additional capacity out of that. The other thing that we need to keep in mind is the condition of the pipeline. In order to get more flow out of it, we're gonna have to boost the pressure up. Here is an example of what occurred earlier this year out on the pipeline. And that picture to the left is a corrosion problem. That's been kind of an annoyance for us over the last several years. Maybe once a year, twice every 3 years, we will have a kind of catastrophic failure. This one right here was, as I understand, I didn't see it. It was kind of a colossal leak spurting up into the air and everything, and here it was quite lovely. Anyway, you can see how they repaired it. In the picture on the right, they're quite proud of the repair. So we'll assess the condition of the pipe. Possibly some rehabilitation of that pipe may be necessary in order to handle that additional or the additional flow and pressure. We'll know as we're moving forward. Then the next issue that we're dealing with is closer to the plant. Once we get the water to the reservoir, then storage is an issue. So this is a vertical, or this is an aerial view of the water treatment plant. Up in the upper left corner is just a little bit of the reservoir. And the reservoir, one of the things that we're dealing with right now is water quality, which is the crux to the odor problem that we've been dealing with for years and years. One of the things that we're going to look at is to do some chemical addition at the plant, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But we're also going to deploy some buoys in this eastern cell that deploy a ultrasonic signal. The ultrasonic signal will attack the algae. And actually, it's kind of clever. It hits their buoyancy, their ability to stay buoyant. It doesn't fry them or anything like that. It just makes it so they sink, and then they can't photosynthesize and they die. So that's one side of it. The other side is improvements at the plant site itself. They're going to be focused on blending, addition of powdered activated carbon or PAC, and then improvements to our ability to backwash the filters at the plant. So this is kind of the crux of what I wanted to kind of hit on firm this evening, because what I'm going to be talking to you about now is a capital project that I want to put out to bid in January. It's 100% designed, approved by the CDPHE, and ready to bid. And so that's essentially what I want to walk you guys through today. So what you're seeing there is basically two focuses of construction that we're going to be doing with this project. At the top, if you can recall this picture, I'd love to be able to point to you, but towards the top of the picture is nice. How about that? Can you guys see that? I know. All right, Michelle gets it. All right. So right in here is one of the areas where we're working. That's where we're going to put a chemical feed building, and then a blend, and in that will be the ability to monitor flow and blend between the various water sources that we have. And then down in here, this is the filter building and the clear well and the old water tank. This is where those improvements are going to be. So let's walk through those quickly. Here is where the footprint. This is the actual site plan of the treatment plant site itself. Zeroing in on the blending facility, what we're looking at here is a building right here, and then this is a buried tank where we will be mixing up a PAC slurry, a powdered activated carbon slurry solution that then will be injected into these influent lines. So we got this line right here, that's coming in from Carter Lake with no stops. It's just straight from the Carter Lake pipeline. This right here is coming in from the reservoir. And that's what's key. We're not using this facility right now. because of the water quality in the reservoir. And so even if we improve the water quality, what we can't do is we can't adjust the flow rates of these two sources and mix them the way we need to in order to get the chemistry right. So that's a big part of this project here. Let's zero in on those a little bit closer. This is the buried pack feed system. Basically, it's a buried tank in the ground. It's kind of like a giant ninja mixer, but instead of 1,500 RPMs, this is like 2 rotations per minute. It moves very slow, and then the slurry feed comes out here. Then it goes into this. So this is the meat of the project. This will be a pipe gallery below ground where these the 2 pipe sources come in, and then these various meters and valves are all tied into our SCADA system, and then we have an opportunity to throttle this one down or speed this one up or vice versa. And then this is our final raw water line that then goes to the plant. Right here is our chemical feed equipment. This is pretty high precision equipment that allows us to give the exact right amount of pack. And here's the blow up version of that. Here's a section version of the building with the roof and the bar joists and stuff such as that. So that's essentially what that side of the project is. It's nothing flashy. It's just getting some chemical into it and then getting it injected into the line. The other side of this project is filtration. We're having a terrible time with our gravity filters. The problem is with these conventional water plants, as you can imagine, you clean the water up as best you can, you run it into a filter, eventually several times a week the filters clog and you got to run the water back through the opposite direction. The problem that we have is that that rate that we have to push that water back is almost as much as the capacity of the plant. The final pump stations that pump the water from the plant into the system are 2 million gallon per day pumps. The backwash flow rate is over 4 MGD. So we basically take all the water that we would need to pump into the system and we do nothing but run water back through our filter for not quite an hour. And so that it sets us back on our heels as we're trying to manage our system. We got to make sure our tanks are full because we can't rely on the plant and all that. So it's a big inconvenience, and it definitely impacts the water quality and the capacity of the plant. So what we're going to do to fix that, you recall seeing the old elevated water tank. Well, that tank has been out of service for a while. And the tank, what's being proposed is we're going to rehabilitate that tank. That tank is right here. And then we're going to, basically, it's a pretty straightforward deal. We're going to run piping from the tank into the filter gallery. And so when the plant is running normally, we'll be filling that tank up. And then when it comes time to backwash, we'll have 100,000 gallons of water there at 60 feet high, ready to run through those filters to facilitate the backwash. So again, pretty straightforward set of improvements, not too complicated. Let's see, I think that's pretty much it there. With respect to I think I mentioned to you that we're looking to advertise the project right after the first of the year. The proposed bidding schedule that I'd like to propose to you guys tonight is to advertise on the 3rd of January, right after the first of the year. Publicly advertise that. We'd have a pre-bid conference on the 18th of January and a public bid opening on the 3rd of February. We would do that, analyze the bids, and then facilitate an award to the Board of Trustees on your February 22nd meeting. So that's the proposed schedule. The construction schedule of these, as you can see, is not huge. It's all of that work that I showed you there was about 4 months. The tank is a separate contract, is what we're looking at there. That's pretty straightforward process and a very specialized contractor, so that we decided not to try to package that up with all that reinforced concrete. And we also have flexibility as to when to do that. We want that tank painted by the time all this work is done, but we don't want to be out there too early to where the general contractor is bunging up all the paint and everything. We want him kind of finished with that work and out of the way, and then we'll come in and clean up and paint that tank. The tank's in pretty good shape, actually. Most of the structural work is not like welding and repairs. It's stuff that's out of code. Falling prevention, ladders are out of code, the hatches, the vents. So we got to bring all that up to standard and then paint it. We're going to paint it the exact same color it is now, and with the town of birth, it's a historic structure, so it's going back exactly the way it was. Then the other noteworthy, so the construction estimate right now that CDM has submitted is 1.65 million for the work that you were looking at there, not including the tank. The tank is estimated at 162,000 for that system, that paint system and that work, which, like I said, was the blasting and repair and structural steel work plus an interior coating and an exterior coating. That's all very extensive. Let's see, 4-month duration for the construction work, 1 month to take care of the tank. And then CDM Smith has submitted, and we've negotiated an amendment to keep them on as the construction management engineer. And so I have an amendment for $130,000 there, and that's on-site construction engineer plus input from the design engineer and his team as questions come up during construction. So I think that's pretty much the extent of what I wanted to talk to you guys about today. Do you have any questions on that at all?
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. Any questions?
I didn't know if you had an order. Okay, well, there we go. About how much capacity is this going to increase the water treatment facility by? Like, just percentage-wise?
Yeah, this work right now is not an increase in firm capacity of the treatment plant. That said, one of the other, and it's an out-of-the-box capital improvement work that we have planned for this year coming up, coming similar to the tank. It doesn't require a lot of engineering, is a third high-service pump. That'll be another 2 MGD, which is a 50% increase in capacity. And so with that pump and these improvements here, then we shouldn't have any trouble at all reaching that.
Okay. I guess in terms of, future proofing, we're getting ahead of anticipated other maintenance and things like that. This is kind of bringing it up to speed and then maybe even a couple steps ahead of it. So we don't have to have this conversation 10 years from now of like, oh, we got to expand even more.
No, this is not an expansion. This is a catch-up project.
Okay.
This will not serve the 2,600 SFEs that Pete was talking about. That we're staring down the barrel at doubling that plant size and going to be looking. The next thing I'm going to come talking to you guys about is master planning for the wastewater, and in that project we will be dealing with an imminent water treatment plant expansion.
Okay, I'm excited to see that. I guess 2 more questions. I guess to this, what kind of interruptions to service are we anticipating? Like what kind of lapse in coverage, what is that going to look like to the town? Is it even going to be noticed?
Yeah, they won't notice it. Our outages in order to facilitate this construction will be on the order of a few hours at a time and less than a half a dozen over the entire duration of the project. and then we'll manage it with a full clear well and full storage tank, so there will be no impact to the citizenry.
Okay. I guess last question, this one's more technical, so I apologize. When you were going through your plans, you're saying, the filter issue is essentially once the filter gets clogged up, you essentially have to stop and then reverse course to clear your filter and then get it going again. I'm not anywhere near the specialist that you are, but could you put two filters in side by side, so essentially you could route one, that filter gets clogged, switch it over to the other one, clean up the first one? Is that something that could get built into the design, or?
So and that's a very good point. We have 4 filters out there, and we backwash one at a time.
Okay.
So 3 of them and are functional, and oftentimes we'll be running 2 at a time, and so one will be down, and then we'll be backwashing. The capacity hits us because after the filters is our pumping, and we need all of that pumping. So we could be filtering all the water we want, and it's just gonna fill up the clear well, because all of the pump water is going back to backwash the filter.
Okay. No, that's all I have.
Any other questions?
So one thing I noticed last summer was the high amount of algae in the west portion of the reservoir, the recreation portion. Are there any plans to do any kind of treatment in that and clear that up so that it's better for recreation, and if that does need to be used to put in the east half, it doesn't contaminate it?
Yeah, good question. There's several things that we're looking at right now. Without doing a lot of monitoring and analysis, our theory is that most of the decline in water quality is occurring due to the increased amount of stormwater runoff that's making its way into Berthoud Reservoir from new neighborhoods with a lot of irrigated and fertilized sods and such as that drenches the reservoir with nutrients, and then that's the key thing that gets the algae going. So we have a study going on right now to divert a lot of this water that is now draining into the river in an alternate path, the stormwater. So that's our plan A. If that occurs, then what we need to do is we need to resolve that issue, get the water out of there, and then do a wait and see and try to let the reservoir fix itself. If it doesn't, then there's other things that you can do. You can do spot chemical additions of copper sulfate and stuff such as that. If you need a quick kill, and then in order to help the reservoir be more healthy, and then it'll sustain itself. The other thing is these ultrasonic, they got one buoy can cover almost 20 acres. So with 2 or 3 of these things, and they're $60,000, $70,000 a piece, so they're not cheap, but they're solar powered, and they're controlled with SCADA. So we could deploy some of those out there, and then that could be a kind of end all on that. So the kind of process as we go through there is get the stormwater off, look at the west cell and see how it's functioning. Also, at the same time, we will have already deployed the ultrasonic in the east cell. Assess that, make sure that that's working like what the salespeople say is going to do, and then we can deploy those on the west side if need be.
Okay. So does the stormwater go into the handy ditch, and then the handy ditch goes into the reservoir, or how does the stormwater get into the reservoir?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. Handy ditch, if we discharge it into the ditch to the west of the railroad tracks. Get oriented here. Yeah. So if we so right here, this blue is the handy ditch. If we divert this stormwater and divert it in here west of the tracks, the current bridge crossing of the handy ditch is pretty constrained. And there's anecdotal evidence showing that during the storm period, handy ditch takes on stormwater as it is, and it's close to maxing out that. So that, we'd have to improve that. So I'm not saying it can't be done, but if we're gonna improve a crossing under the railroad, then let's stay out of the handy ditch and let's put our crossing for our stormwater.
Okay,
And trustee Hyman, I think part of your question was how does it get in to the reservoir? There's an open channel, as you drive down the access road to the reservoir on the north side, there's an open channel that, there's some pipes that go underneath 287, there's an open channel and a flow measuring device. It goes into a small water quality pond on the far west end of the Berthoud Reservoir and then into the reservoir from there.
okay. Well, that was my next question, was is it possible to treat the stormwater?
We've talked a little bit about that, those are not our best option.
Okay. All right, can the backwash water, I mean, it sounds like it's a lot of water, does that just go down into the sewer system, or can we reuse that and get it back in the lake, or is it contaminated at that point?
No, ultimately, a capture of the backwash water should be part of the plan. It's not, and it actually was studied in the preliminary engineering report for this CDM project, but it was pulled. I'm not sure, do you remember why it was pulled, Chris? I think the thought was, we don't want, so we're trying to be careful as to what we work on here, that it not be something that we have to throw away when we expand the plant. With the plant expansion, we call them the residuals, all the solids that we clean out of the water, that a management plan will absolutely have to be part of that. And that'll include cleaning and dewatering this backwash water and getting as much as we can back to the head of the plant. We weren't able to do that with this project.
Okay.
So it's now all going down to the sanitary sewer.
Okay, yeah, it sounds like that would be worth doing, because it sounds like it's a lot of water.
Yeah.
And then the ARV, is that what you said the problem was with the pipeline?
Mhm.
What does that stand for?
Air release valve.
Okay. Do we really think that that's gonna fix it, or we just don't really know?
We don't know.
Okay. Yeah. But there's two pipelines side by side?
No, a single, a 16-inch up to where the old handy head gate was.
Okay,
And then from that point on, it's 18-inch.
I see.
So one pipeline.
Okay. But engineering wise, that should be able to run 10 CFS.
That's correct. The pipeline was designed and then configured with subsequent, several subsequent projects as a gravity pipeline. That first vent I showed you that was open to the atmosphere, when you got a pipeline like that and it's set up as a gravity pipeline, you're missing out on so much of your capacity, because you'll go for a way and then you vent it, you have a pipe and it's under pressure and it's moving, and then you stop. It's kind of like you're running a marathon, you're in your zone and then you stop and take a water break, and so this pipeline is kind of functioning that way. We keep stopping. There's an open vault here, and then an open vault at the Heron Lakes pump station, and an open vault at the west cell, and an open vault at the east cell. So one of the analysis that we're going to do once we tune up our hydraulic model, let's close all those things down and see what kind of capacity that we get. We'd have fully functioning RVs. We'd have a true pressure pipe, and then then the engineering analysis says that you shouldn't have any trouble with 10 cubic feet per second at all.
So chances of having to replace the pipeline are pretty low.
Well, if we get in during condition assessment and find a lost cause, then that would be the case. I don't think that's the case. Talking to the contractors who work on it, it's occasional spot failures. The cathodic protection system, the system that keeps it from corroding, definitely needs some attention. I don't think it's been maintained in years, and so so now all this corrosion that was being absorbed by the cathodic protection system is now being focused on the pipeline. So that definitely needs some attention.
Okay, yeah, so I mentioned to Chris and Pete after the last meeting that first section that follows County Road 8 before it goes north there by Hertha Reservoir, that was built very much in a rush because, and this is like, I don't know, 1999 probably, maybe 98. The town administrator at the time came to us and said, Larimer County's repaving this road in 3 months, and if we don't get the pipeline in, we will have to pay to repave the road because we'll be tearing it up. So that first section was put in quite a big rush.
Okay, that's good to know. I wasn't aware of that.
Historically.
Yeah.
And just for people in the audience, prior to that pipeline, the only way to get water to Berthoud was in the Handy Ditch, which is that blue line that comes in from the north. And the Handy Ditch only runs during irrigation season. So in 1996, the only way to get water to Berthoud was the ditch, and the only water you had in the winter was whatever you had in Welch Reservoir and Berthoud Reservoir, and if you ran out of water in February, you had to wait till May. So the pipeline was a huge step forward in flexibility and water quality, because the Handy Ditch is an open air ditch with lots of contaminants. That's it.
Trustee Hardy?
I think everything got covered.
I just have one question for you, and that is the integrity of the pipe that you showed where, there was corrosion and it had ruptured. How do you analyze the remainder of the pipe to kind of get an estimate of what we're looking at for maintenance and repair?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's lots of methodologies out there. A lot of them have developed and are becoming very reliable. Probably the first thing that we would do is what we call a cathodic study, where there are these test stations, and you can put instrumentation on these test stations and run current into the pipe basically, and A, you can see if your anodes are still there, which they're not going to be, and B, what the activity is from a corrosion standpoint, which is basically a battery cell. And so you can measure how much corrosion is occurring, and then from that makes some assessments as to how much metal is there. And then you can make some decisions after that. If it's a lost cause, then you go to plan B. But a pipeline like this with a lot of out in the middle of nowhere, and it's not that deep, some excavations and doing some checks externally is a good idea, and it's not very expensive. There's some instrumentation that you can enter into the, it's pretty cool. You put this ball in the pipe, it floats all the way down, and as it's going, it's collecting data just as fast as it can, and it's talking to a computer on the top side, and it's measuring thickness and corrosion and the profile of the metal itself, and doing it in a full 360 degrees. And those instruments have gotten real good lately, and you can get a good assessment. And it's pretty expensive, but you can get a good assessment as to what you got left. It is very much as like that, except it's free form. Yeah, it's not tethered. so to speak. I don't, maybe there's colonoscopies that are free form out there, I'm not aware of it, but otherwise, very similar. But and I make it sound like if it's corroded and the situation is dire and the pipe has to be thrown away, there's a ton of really top-notch lining technologies out there that can be done without moving a shovel full of dirt. And they're all have gotten themselves certified and structurally for pressure pipe and for water in a treated water system and approved by AWWA and such.
Yeah, I've seen that on the internet, where they like push a sock through, it looks like.
Yeah.
It hardens and then
That's right.
creates like a really thin layer inside the whole pipe, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And a lot of those, if you just get that liner in, the rest of the old pipe can corrode away. I mean, it's a standalone pipe once you get it in. So that's a possibility.
So after this, after we have these updates completed or started and moving along to the main plant, when would it be appropriate to do this study on our pipes coming in?
Well, so we're kind of taking it in bites right now. So the flow study where we're going to test it to see what it does, we're looking at doing that in January.
Okay, good. All right.
And that we actually had that tentatively scheduled for December 8th, had Northern all set up ready to do that. And then I thought we better make sure those PRVs are working, and we couldn't confirm that they're working. So we stepped back, let's fix these, and then we reschedule. So that's going to occur, right after the first of the year. CDM will then finish their study, and then we'll move forward from that. And I would say the next steps would be, in I'd say February or March is my expectation. That's kind of the arrangement I have set up with them.
Excellent. Any other questions, concerns, additions?
Mayor Pro Tem Dower, Trustee Stevens is on Zoom and had a few questions, if that's possible.
Yes, we can honor that. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Affirmative.
Okay, just a couple real quick questions. First of all, I just wanted to see if this would work, so I could ask the questions. But mainly is, as far as the plant is concerned and the new filtration system, there wouldn't be a higher yield, but would the quality of water be better, and if so, how much?
This is an improvements to the backwash improvements or improvements to the operation of the plant. We should not expect an improvement in water quality. What it's going to do for us is it's going to eliminate the impact to the distribution system that we feel every single time we have to backwash the filters. So water quality is going to be status quo, and then the actual rated capacity coming out of the plant will be the same.
Okay, so mainly just for filtration. All right. The second thing was when you were talking about the pipeline, and you're talking about anodes, and there wouldn't be any. Are you saying that you believe they've all corroded away?
I do.
Or were there? Okay, so there were anodes put in place at the construction of the pipeline. They're just probably all gone.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Trustee Stevens. Okay, Mr. Matthews, thank you very much for your presentation. That was excellent.
Mayor Pro Tem Dower, if I may, I'll remind you guys, Ken has been with us now for 2 months. So I think we're thrilled to have him on our team. It was a long process to find the right person to take on this utilities director role. But I think what you've heard from him tonight, you can really see how much he's already learned about our system, how much he's kind of committed to getting it right, and just wanted to say thank you that he's here. It's been great for us as town staff, town leadership to have him here.
Happy to be here.
Thank you
Awesome.
very much. We appreciate it.
You make it sound so easy.
To him it is.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're going to move on to our next agenda item, which is the Youth Advisory Commission is going to do a presentation for us, introduced by the President of the Youth Advisory Commission, Maggie Langer. And if Maggie wouldn't mind also introducing the other members here tonight. Thank you.
All right. Hi, I'm Maggie Langer. I'm the chair of the Youth Advisory, and they'll also introduce themselves when they talk about their thing. But we have Grazia Novak, Kenyon Clarkson, Daniel Hatton, and Hallie Cook, who stepped away. And so we're here today to talk to you guys about a student survey that we put out to the high school. And last year, as some of you guys may remember, we actually put out the student survey in the middle school. And so our hopes with this survey was to kind of get some insight from what the students in the high school and middle school thought of how they felt represented through the town in general. And we just wanted to get as much insight as we could, since we our goal is to take what we hear for the youth and bring it back to you all. So that was our goal with the survey, and we had some trouble last year getting it in the high school, so that's why we worked hard through our meetings to get it in the high school this year, and that's what we're talking about.
Sorry, I almost missed it. So I'm Hallie Cook, and I'll be talking about the demographics that we reached. So last year, obviously, it was in the middle school, so the main ages were 11, 12, and 13. But this year, it was in the high school, so we're looking at 14, 15, and 16-year-olds. And 81.9% of the respondents were currently Berthoud residents. So it shows, for the majority, our results are showing kids that actually live in Berthoud. And then in the question of how long the respondents have been a Berthoud resident, the majority, which was 24.5%, have lived in Berthoud for 10 to 15 years. The other major demographic was 1 to 5 years, but it's pretty even across the board.
I'm Daniel Hatton, and I'm going to be talking about the different questions that we asked the students. So the first question that we asked was, what town events have you attended, just to get a good idea of what events kids actually go to. So the top 4 responses were Berthoud Days, the Homecoming Parade, Farmers Market, and Oktoberfest. The second question we asked was, which events did you enjoy the most in Berthoud? To get an idea of not only what events people go to, but what events people our age actually enjoy. So the top 2 responses are the same as in the first question, which are Berthoud Days and the Homecoming Parade, followed by the Oktoberfest and July 3rd fireworks. Question 3 was, how well do you feel the youth in our town are represented or listened to? So about 30% of our responders say that they were not adequately informed to answer this question, so they weren't sure how to answer. The majority, 32%, said that they think the town does a fair job providing for kids' needs. And then the next biggest amount of people was 29.8%. About 30% of kids say that, oh wait, no, not 29.8, that's the amount that were not adequately informed, but 26.6 said that the town does just enough, but should definitely do more with students in mind. So this shows that a substantial portion of students at Berthoud High School do think the town could do more with students in mind.
My name is Grazia Novak, and I'm going to talk about kind of the free response questions that we asked students on the survey.
And you all should have access to the full list of responses that we got. These are just kind of the questions that we asked and then the main trends that we got from that. So the questions that we asked were, if you did not enjoy or attend an event, please explain why. If you feel that there is a way to make town events better, please explain. And if you would like to see anything for Birth and Youth, please explain. And we kind of left these open-ended so that we could really get real opinions, like unfiltered opinions from the students, so that that could really help us to formulate ideas for the future. So kind of the overall trends that we received from that were that many did not attend events because they didn't know that they were happening, and many did not attend events because there weren't activities that interested them, and many requested more events and activities that were geared towards teens rather than just adults and younger children, which we'll talk more about in our proposal in a second.
Hi, my name is Kenyon Clarkson. So for our action steps, because of what we learned from our survey, we wanted to host and wanted the town to host more events that would be geared towards teens. One thing that we came up with was having a carnival, which is really fun, and we'll talk about that more. Other things that we wanted to do in our future were have an ice skating rink at Snowfest, work with the high school to draw teens in more and engage them more in the community. We also wanted to connect with some mental health experts and work to see what we can do to help teens in our community and to make mental health issues more like brought to light. The last thing is that we wanted to include activities and have special events at the rec center.
So our proposal today is that we, like our first action step and something that we wanted to accomplish as like our main thing right now would be a carnival type event for teens and young adults. And so we, with the help of Mayor Pro Tem Dower, we found the vendor Airborne Interactive Activities. And we, at our meetings, we've been looking at some of the types of events and rides that they have and that they can offer for an event like this. And we were thinking that it could take place at Wagner Farm Park near the end of July of 2022. So that's what we're here kind of to talk to you guys about today and for you guys to keep in mind for the budget of next year.
So, just looking at the vendor that we specifically researched, here are some of the ideas of things that would be at this carnival. There's hamster balls, and I'm just gonna zip through these, but if you want me to stop and explain more, I can. Hamster balls, a mobile ropes course, a mobile zip line, carnival swing, rock wall, bungee trampoline, and pedal cars. These were just the main ones that they housed, and obviously we're not saying like this is the definite list of things we need, but it's just some brainstorming. Some other ideas we had were like having a dunk tank with like teachers from the school in it or something fun like that. So we're still playing with it, but this is just an idea.
And so that's what we have right now. Thank you guys for listening to us. Do you guys have any questions?
Thank you, Maggie. Questions from the trustees?
I have
Sure.
one.
All right, Tim?
Since they brought up
Trustee Hardy?
Snowfest, I've always been trying to find more things to do for Snowfest. One is to get you guys to come build a sculpture. But I like the skating rink idea. But some of the things that we have to take into consideration on that, and I could probably get Christian to find out from our insurance company on that, but the insurance for an activity like that, you start getting ice and sharp blades and teenagers. You gotta find out how those mix well together, so no one gets hurt and liability's covered, so. But, you know, the insurance would be my main thing on that, but I'd love to try and get something like that going. Sometimes these companies cover their own insurance, I believe, for those situations as well, so that's where maybe if I could find someone that would do something like that, then the liability would fall more on them, I guess. So, but yeah, I'd definitely I'm looking for more things to bring to Snowfest.
I've got a couple more weeks to think about it.
All right.
Well, you mentioned budget, so do you have any idea what, so this would be a one-day thing, or would this be like a weekend thing, the carnival?
Yeah, so we were trying to decide like when would be a good time, and that's why we kind of picked like the end of July, because it would be away from like birthday days, it wouldn't conflict with that, or the July 3rd fireworks. And so we were kind of thinking it could be, it's kind of like a birthday days, but it's more geared towards teens, because in our survey we found that like a lot of the teens said that they would come to more events and they would be interested in events if they were more geared towards them. So that's where our idea came from. And we are still working with the vendor. I'm not sure, Mayor Pro Tem Dower, if you have an update on the actual budget regarding the event, but as of now, it would just be a one-day event.
Yes, the vendor did give multiple options for, you know, a couple hours on a Friday and a couple hours on a Saturday, and options of five different activities versus 7 different activities. And the price was rather stout, shall we say? So it appears, it depends on what the trustees would like to do, but the budget, Administrator Kirk, you saw what some of the estimates were, and it looks like to start modestly, a one-day event of a limited number of hours might be appropriate for the first year. So can you give us an idea?
Yeah, so Amanda Gustafson, our Recreation Director, and I had a chance to just briefly review the proposals that you received from that vendor. And we have a lot of questions about how that event might be structured in terms of, you know, timing, insurance, and there's a lot of logistical things that go into an event to that magnitude, right, that we have some questions about. But I think from a cost standpoint, if it's a one-day event, it's probably less expensive. I think the proposals that we saw were for a 2-day event. They were somewhere in the neighborhood between $25,000 and $35,000, which is expensive. You know, our fireworks show costs $30,000, just for context. But I think that there's some opportunity there. I do think that we have, my suggestion would be that first, I think it would be great for the Youth Advisory Commission and our recreation team to get together and talk about this event and talk through the kind of the logistics that go into an event like this. Everything from porta potties to security and access, and you know, you have to pay to get in. If you do, who collects the money? How does that get distributed? Do you use tickets? I mean, there's all these kind of things that happen, right? But I think it'd be great to sit down and work together on planning an event like this. I think we could use our recreational marijuana tax, Fund 41 in the budget that you guys will consider later on tonight. The use of that tax revenue, one of the specifically stated uses of that revenue is for youth activities and services. And so I think this would qualify as youth activity, and I think there's some money in that fund to be able to do an event like this. But that way, once they get together with our rec staff, kind of work through the details, we'll have a much better idea of what it would take to put on an event like that. And I think there's a lot of ways we could do that really, both cost effectively, but also in a really attractive way too, so.
Yes, thank you. And another thing is that this is kind of like the first big event that we've proposed. We are still kind of new. And so something like that would be awesome, just so we can all learn like what goes into making a bigger event like this.
Any other questions?
Just a couple comments. So, I mean, we spent more than that on July 3rd, because we spent $30,000 on the actual, you know, that's my favorite part of government spending, is we can take $30,000 and blow it up in a half an hour. Responsible spending, but
It's patriotic.
But no, I would have to say that it's been one of the better additions to the town's event schedule in all the years I've been on the board. It's just awesome. But anyway, with the carnival and staffing and
The
all
event
that,
itself costs us about $13,000.
on top of the fireworks.
On top of the fireworks.
Yeah,
So we spend about a little under $50,000 on the the July 30th event.
Yeah.
The majority of that's fireworks.
So I wouldn't consider personally $25,000 to $30,000 that doesn't surprise me, and I don't think that's an unworkable number, and I don't think that's hugely expensive in the context of all the other things that we spend money on. And I think it would be a great to have a teen kid oriented event. You know, when I first moved here, my kids were small, whatever, but like in the late 90s, early 2000s, we actually had a circus that came to town. And I remember the parade with the elephant going down Main Street, and there were elephant rides over at Turner Middle School, and it was, you know, I mean, I know that circuses are controversial nowadays with all the animals, but at the time, it was a really great small town event, and it was great for kids. So anyway, I think it'd be really good to figure it out. I mean, it seems like it's a lot of setup to me, so it seems like, you know, having it be 2 days instead of 1 day might spread out the crowds and give people that don't hear about it on the first day a chance to come back the second day. But it just, I mean, I think that would depend on the budget, but it seems like there's a lot of stuff to set up for just 1 day. So it seems like a Saturday, Sunday might be better, or even a Friday night, Saturday, something like that. But I absolutely think we should pursue it. And, you know, the really good news about the town budget is that our revenues are increasing pretty rapidly because of all the growth, because of all the new businesses. And I guess, you know, we're the only marijuana shop, you know, in this part of Larimer County. So I think we draw a lot of people from Loveland down to our 2 dispensaries. So I think putting that money to good use to support something like this would be a great idea.
I guess my main question for you guys is, when it comes to getting word out to participants, either about youth advisory council activities or your meetings in general, have you guys had a brainstorm session on that of like what could be done, or different ways you could kind of approach it so that, you know, the number one response seems to be, I didn't know, or, you know, it wasn't posted, or, you know, stuff like that. So have you guys thought of any ways to kind of get that word out more, or is it still in work in progress?
Yeah, we've been kind of working, it'd still be like working on how to get the word out. I think that the most success that we've found would be like going through the high schools and trying to do it that way, because there are like so many kids, and there's so many ways that like teachers and administration and all that through the high schools have to get things out. So just kind of tagging along, I think that's the best way that we found. But there's also like social media promotion, I think would be helpful, and flyers around town, and especially like the new rec center, because there are like so many youth that would use the rec center that could see events that we can post and kind of promote that through there too.
Okay. Well, that was the only question I had comment-wise. You guys are doing amazing work. It's really cool to see all the stuff that you guys have been able to gather. And I know it's kind of frustrating, your survey base is a little bit flimsy at times, depending on if the teacher remembers or not to hand out the survey. But this is information that matters and it counts. And I mean, showing up and getting this, I'm fully in support of it. I think it's a great idea to have a carnival. I think 2 days at minimum would probably be a great idea, just because I know that, you know, while it'd be for the kids, I absolutely guarantee you that there's a lot of adults that's like, well, there's nothing else to do, why not? So probably a good idea to make it even maybe last longer. But I think it's a great idea, and I'm really glad that you guys are pushing on this one. And I fully support it. So thank you guys.
Yes,
I'll
thank
definitely
you.
be there for the go-karts.
Well, I think you guys have just done a fantastic job, especially with some of the workarounds you had to do. You came up with very clever ways of getting those surveys done. And I think that was fantastic, a great learning experience for you guys. And you've got that information, you brought it to us, you have ideas of what you think would engage the youth. And we are all always very impressed with all the work that you do. I think this would be a really neat town event, and Trustee Heineman pointing out, you know, how much we actually spend on the 3rd of July. You know, yeah, we could definitely justify, I think, spending a significant amount on a youth-focused event. So I'm hoping that the trustees go for it and that we can maybe get you guys into the budget for 2022. So thank you very much. Any last things you'd like to share with us? All right, well, thank you very much.
Yes,
Appreciate
thank
your
you guys.
time.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Excellent. Okay, and this is a nice segue into our next agenda item, which is the 2022 annual budget, mill levy and fee schedule. Introduction by Cindy Leach. Or not.
I'll cover it too, and Cindy's here certainly for any questions that you might have. We obviously went over the budget in significant detail back in November. We had a couple of changes since that time, most in minor in fashion. The first is, and we did talk about this during the budget presentation, we just frankly forgot to include the design expense for Richardson Park. That's been added to the budget. We also have added $250,000 to our budget in the 1998 1% sales tax fund for the design, the construction document preparation for the renovation of 3rd Street in Massachusetts. You may remember the big pedestrian mall kind of concept that we had planned on 3rd in Massachusetts in the Mountain Avenue overlay plan. We'd like to start design work on that, largely because we expect Old Town Hall to be redeveloped in the near future, and we think that those two projects coupled together could really kick off some major redevelopment downtown. So that's $250,000 for the construction document preparation of that improvement. And then once we were done with that, we'd bring that back to you to decide if you wanted to move forward with the actual reconstruction of 3rd Street in Massachusetts and the improvements that would be envisioned there. And then, excuse me, lastly, we also added another $250,000 to that same 1998 1% sales tax fund to cover the landscape design expense out at the I-25 roundabouts. So you've already approved the contract for the sculpture work. Now we'll do design, landscape design that will coincide with that, with the construction of those roundabouts, the reconstruction of those roundabouts and the addition of the sculptures. Outside of that, the budget is effectively the same as it was that we presented to you. You know, again, with just some minor adjustments here and there as we've gone forward. In total, the budget is still very balanced from an operational perspective. We'll be using reserve funds across a variety of funds for major capital improvements and investments like we talked about back in November. We do have 2 funds in excess items that we need to adopt a resolution for to cover expenses for this year. Both of those are what I would call budgeted overages. They're not actual expense overages at this point. But if we spend everything we planned to, which I can already tell you that we won't, because we only have 2 weeks left in the year. But if we did, from a budgetary perspective, we would be over. And we can't, by law, we cannot spend more than we budgeted. So we're making some adjustments so that as we go through the end of the year closeout, which extends into fiscal year 2022, right, as we get invoices and things that are being paid from the end of 2021 into 2022, that we've got some buffers. So one of those is in the 2019 1% fund, and actually both of them are. One is associated with Wagner Farm Park construction, and one is associated with street improvements work, actually I think in the 1998 1% sales tax fund. So again, both of those currently are well within expense. But again, if we spent everything out of that fund, the total bottom line of that fund would be over budget. So we're giving ourselves some buffer to make sure that we don't exceed that budgeted amount, excuse me, when we go through end of the year closeout. I'm confident again that we won't, but it's prudent for us to just make that adjustment now so that we don't overspend unintentionally and then go, now we have to come back and that is a whole lot of reasons why we don't want to exceed our budgeted expense amount. Outside of that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Cities can talk to you about the mill levy. The mill levy is a very small change in the proposed mill levy for 2022. And some of that is because we've bumped up against our revenue caps. And so you could make adjustments for us to increase that mill levy beyond where it's kind of capped. We don't think that's necessary, nor is it recommended. So again, we're happy to answer any questions you might have, but I think in general that covers the majority of the changes from November to today.
All right.
Did you want to open it up to public comment first, and we can do, or I just, because it is a.
Yeah, it is a public hearing, yes. All
Well,
right.
we can do our standard
Yeah, no, we can totally,
questions,
that's what I was-
questions and public comment.
All right, why don't we go ahead and start with questions then?
Currently, I actually only have one, and this actually does regard the mill levy increase. I guess my question is, what was it formerly up until we adopted this? What was the mill levy rate at?
I'm gonna forget the number off the top of my head. Cindy, I think it's 9.82. Cindy can.
Hello, so the mill levy right now is 9.669.
Oh.
And it's actually going to go to 9.656. And it's just going down a little bit.
Okay, so
And is that mandated or?
Well, the amount that it's going down is based on the abatements from last year, abatements and refunds that we get to recollect. The year before it was like 0.033, and this year it's like 0.023. It's 0.020, last year's 0.031 or 33, I don't have that with me. And that's basically, they tell you what we're allowed to collect. So we figure the calculation so that we can collect what was refunded from last year, so we can make up for what we were shorted. It's always like a year behind.
Oh, okay.
So anything that they refunded based on somebody's, objection or whatever, then we can then recollect that the next year. So, and they tell us what that is.
And how did that ballot initiative that changed, that fixed the residential rate versus the Gallagher amendment, which was causing it to ratchet down, did that have an effect this year?
Not on us.
Okay.
I mean, we are right now, we reach our statutes, the limit that they give us, the 5.5 limit. If our mill levy were higher, we could collect more, but we can only collect the lesser of the maximum of our mill levy, or the limit that they allow us to have. So we are, in the years past, we've had to temporarily lower our mill levy because we can only collect the limit. At this point, we're collecting our mill levy, which is less than the limit. So if our mill levy were higher, we could collect more, but you can't do that without a vote, so.
What is our current mill levy cap, just so I know? Like, what is the maximum mill that we can?
Well, the maximum amount that we can collect is 1.573 million, 1,573,324. And I believe that what this adds up to is about 1.4. So we could collect maybe another 100,000.
Okay.
Maybe another 120,000.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's not like we're that far off,
Right.
but, our mill levy basically is, like I said, in the years past, we've had to lower that because we're at that maximum, and now we're kind of a little bit under, so.
I guess
There's not a lot of, I mean, it's basically, it's a calculation, but there's not a lot of, it's not like we figure what we want it to be. It is what it is.
Okay. I think the only other question I have is, can we get, I guess, is the content for Youth Advisory Committee, is that something we can put into this, or is that already, or is that conversation for 2022?
I think it's up to you. I didn't just plug in a random number.
Sure.
We got the proposals last week in terms of cost. I think because there's a lot up in the air about what would we actually include, again, I think we have a lot of questions from the staff level. that I think are easy to answer, but that I think we should all sit down and talk about with the Youth Advisory Commission before we set a number. And when we do that, we can come to you and ask you to make an addition to the budget, rather than just pick a number out of the air and say, well, let's just spend $50,000 on a youth event.
Okay.
I mean, we could do something much greater than that. We could do something equally as fun that's less expensive, or we could do exactly what they have planned, but I think there's just a lot that's up in the air, so my suggestion would be that we bring a plan back to you with an actual dollar amount.
Okay, yeah, no, I'd be on board with that. I just want to make sure it wasn't skated by because they just talked about it.
Sure.
We can absolutely amend it later, is what you're telling me. So yeah, okay, that's all I had question-wise.
Yeah, that was my question, was just if we did want to support that, if we needed to put in a placeholder, but it sounds like you would just include that in the June budget.
What I think what we'd likely do is we'd come to you with the plan and the expense. You could make a budget supplement at that time, or we could make the adjustment at mid-year.
Yeah.
Trustee Hardy?
I don't know if it's an important question or not, but you said something about it's against the law, we can't overspend our budget. What is the consequence if we didn't amend this and we overspend our budget? Is it just a little?
I'm honestly not sure I know the answer to that question. I just don't want to find out.
So we don't know what the consequences are, but there could be. Okay, just curious.
We don't want to be like Washington.
I don't want Berthoud's name in the paper for having violated state statute.
I'll Google it later.
Yeah.
Violate your oath.
Oh, yeah, yeah. We'd be violating our oath to uphold the law.
Right.
Oh,
And part of that is to make sure that we're within both those guide rails
I was just
of
curious if there's
democracy.
a fine or just a.
All right.
That's what we call driving the
Put on
wagon
Santa's
close to
bad
the
list.
edge. So we try to keep it over towards the mountainside.
All right,
Take the
so
low trail.
with that, we will go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anyone here in the audience who would like to speak to this agenda item? No? All right, seeing none, we will, Christian, are there any online?
Mayor Pro Tem Dower, there are not any participants online wishing to speak.
Okay, all right, I'll close the public hearing. All
Mayor-
right.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes.
you can choose to, I think, reopen. I'm sorry, I should have
Oh, I
projected.
should have done this.
I forgot to tell you that there was one other addition that we made to the budget,
Okay.
unintentionally, of course. In that recreational marijuana fund, in the 7% excise tax or sales tax that goes on that, those sales that can be used for youth and recreation services, sidewalk, and law enforcement. We intend to contract the Wildfire Arts Center to provide arts and STEAM programs, rather than hire our own recreation coordinator to provide duplicative services. We think we have an opportunity to partner with them to leverage their existing volunteer and teaching base, to utilize their facility, and to enhance our recreational offerings outside of athletics, which is the vast majority of our recreational offerings at this point. We'd like to support other recreational opportunities like fine arts, performing arts, and including science, technology, engineering, arts, mathematics, kind of those STEAM programs. So we did budget $60,000 to contract with Wildfire Arts to provide those programs for us as a contract service provider. So I didn't want to bypass that without mentioning that to you as part of our plan for 2022.
Okay. All right, with that addition, I will reopen the public hearing. If there are any comments to that addition. And again, no one here in the audience, but online. If there's anyone online, virtual participants can raise your hand in your Zoom meeting controls or send a chat message indicating that you would like to speak. If you're on the telephone, *9 to indicate that you would like to speak.
There are not any participants wishing to speak.
Okay, I will close the public hearing. So any further discussion on this, you guys? No?
Well, just a couple of comments. I mean, it's just amazing to see the general fund at $11 million. Having seen it below 3, not all that long ago. So it's just incredible how solid it is. You, Chris, mentioned that you were doing the salary survey, and those, has that been incorporated?
It has. What we found, we finished the salary survey after we did our budget presentation to you. We made some adjustments to our budgeted salaries, only a small, we had already budgeted 7.5%. And so we're about 8.5% now based on the market adjustments that we think we need to make. What we found was that there are some positions, especially those that we've had more frequent turnover, that are pretty close to market rate, which makes sense, right? Because we've struggled to hire people and we've had to adjust salaries to be able to bring people in, and so those are already at market, especially some of our longer tenured positions. I would say that the market range for our salaries in some areas have adjusted as much as 18 and 19%.
Oh, wow.
So you can see how far behind the market we were, and we're fortunate that we haven't had a lot of turnover. We've got a lot of great people that have been here a long time. And I say long time, I think, our average tenure is somewhere between 4 and 9 years, but long enough that, the market has kind of passed them up. We don't want to lose that institutional knowledge. We don't want to lose those folks to better paying jobs. So we're adjusting salaries, not to that 19%. That's the range adjustment, right? So their kind of minimum and maximum salary they could earn in that position is adjusting up. But if their current salary is within that range, their salary won't have a significant adjustment beyond a normal cost of living or merit increase that we would normally budget and offer. And we only ended up actually with 4, maybe 5 positions whose current salary or current hourly rate is actually below the market range. So those people get moved up into the market range, kind of to the minimum salary for that position, or what we see as the minimum salary for that position. It was a great exercise to go through, though. Employers Council performed that for us. They took every position we have in the organization. Currently, we have about 50 full-time employees and 50 part-time employees. But they took every position in the organization, compared that against those similar or same positions in other municipalities in our region. They used a variety of data sources. They have their own data that Employers Council maintains. They have access to other data sets through companies like Pay Factors. And then they also use data from the Colorado Municipal League, who does a very extensive compensation survey every year. And anyway, they set new mid-ranges for our salaries, and then we adjusted so that we have about a 30% range from minimum to maximum, what we would typically pay in that position.
No, I think that's really positive, and I think that's really key. And, I've been one saying that I think we need more staff, because we do need to keep up with our growth, but I also really commend you for the strategy of staying pretty lean and building up money for projects, because we definitely have some catch up to do, and I think that that's gonna really pay off in the next few years. So anyway, and then could you just remind us how our projected sales tax revenues for this year are coming in compared to what we forecast?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to explain it is that in October of this year, for all intents and purposes, I wouldn't say exactly to the dollar, but roughly by October of this year, we'd already collected as much sales tax revenue as we'd planned for the entire year. So we'll see where that finally ends up. It's not really that inconsistent with the past few years, where we've seen 17 to 30% increases year over year for the last several years. So our retail economy is doing very well. A lot of that's driven by building use tax as well. But even in our general retail sales taxes, we're seeing significant increases.
Yeah, so anyway, really, really, really incredible to see what a strong position Berthoud is in compared to some pretty lean, dark years in the past. So pretty exciting to have money to spend on making improvements and adding amenities to town, so.
It definitely makes our job more interesting.
Was it saying more money, more problems?
Yes.
Okay.
So like the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, what's his name, Mark Cuban said, having money doesn't give you more problems, it just exacerbates the ones you already have.
Yeah.
All right, so it looks like we've wrapped up. Any other questions, comments about the budget? I would just echo what's been said before. I really do want to see the Youth Advisory Commission's recommendation come to fruition in 2022.
We're excited to work with them and
Yeah.
put together a really awesome event.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Okay, so we need 5 separate motions to be made.
How do you wanna, just like kinda go down the line? or-
Yeah, why don't we do that? You start with the first one.
Okay, all right. I move to adopt resolution number 2021-33, a resolution summarizing expenditures and revenues for each fund and adopting a budget for the town of Berthoud, Colorado for the calendar year beginning on the first day of January 2022 and ending the last day of December 2022.
Second.
All right, can we go through, do we have to take a roll call vote after every single one?
Yes, we will.
Okay, all right, so the motion has been made by trustee Grace, seconded by trustee Hindman. Roll call vote.
Trustee Hardy,
Yes.
trustee Grace.
Yes.
Trustee Hyman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dower.
Yes.
Oh, Chris, there's just 4 of us.
I move to adopt resolution 2021-34, a resolution appropriating sums of money to various funds in the amounts and for the purposes set forth for the town of Berthoud, Colorado for the 2022 budget year.
Second it.
All right, a motion has been made by trustee Hindman and seconded by trustee Hardy. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Grace.
Yes.
Trustee Hardy,
Yes.
trustee Hyman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dower.
Yes. All right,
All right, guess I'll go next.
you're next.
I may move to adopt resolution 2021-35, a resolution authorizing the expenditure of funds in the excess of 2021 budget.
I'll second.
I just want to comment that I think that's very appropriate. You got to make that motion after your question, Tim.
All right, we
Just
have
luck of the draw on that one.
motion made by trustee Hardy, seconded by trustee Grace. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Hyman,
Yes.
trustee Hardy,
Yes.
trustee Grace.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dower.
Yes.
I move to adopt resolution 2021-36, a resolution of the town of Berthoud adopting a fee schedule for all town fees as provided in the Berthoud Municipal Code.
Second.
All right, we have a motion made by trustee Grace, seconded by trustee Hindman. Roll call vote.
Trustee Hardy,
Yes.
trustee Grace.
Yes.
Trustee Hyman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dower.
Yes.
I move to adopt ordinance 1298, an ordinance of the town of Berthoud levying the taxes for the year 2022 to defray the costs of municipal government of Berthoud, Colorado for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2022 and ending December 31st, 2022.
Second it.
All right, the motion has been made by trustee Hindman, seconded by trustee Hardy. Roll call vote.
Trustee Grace.
Yes.
Trustee Hyman.
Yes.
Trustee Hardy,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dower.
Yes. All right, as previously stated, agenda item number 5 is being postponed. So we will go on to, oh, yes, 5-minute break. Would you guys like that?
That would be great.
Much
All right.
appreciated.
We will take 5-minute break, back at 8:05. Bringing the meeting back to order, our next agenda item is the Hammond Farm 6th filing preliminary plat. And that is being introduced by Mr. Olinger.
Good evening, trustees. As you see before you on your screens here, this is a preliminary plat, preliminary plat for the 6th filing of the Hammond subdivision. It is located roughly in this area on the screen here, south of County Road 10E, east of Highway 287, west of where it is now Nicholson Street, that's kind of extends down through here now, and north of Richardson Park and some county non-annexed lots. So the current zoning on this property is R4, which is mixed use. The entire this property was rezoned along with the rest of the Hammond subdivision in various different stages between 2016 and 2020. R4 allows for a maximum of 24 units per acre with a minimum lot size of 1,200 square feet. Allows the developers or allows the property owners to get a little bit denser than the traditional single family development pattern. On the future land use map, this property is identified as orange, which is our urban residential zone, and a little bit of the reddish pink color, which is our commercial, suburban commercial zone. So give you a little background on this whole site. Hammond as a whole, the entire thing, all the way up to the bend in 287 down to the southern extent of this property. It was all approved as an ODP and PUD back in 2008 with an overall density of 758 residential dwelling units and about 750,000 square feet of commercial space with a minimum of 5 acres devoted to it. It also allowed for high-density residential uses throughout the entire project. So the original developer sold it to the current applicant, who has been, as he developed the land, has been rezoning it out of the PUD. I want to note that this property was, the entire southern half, south of 10E of the Hammond property was rezoned to R4, so it's the entire area, as you can see here. The east side of this property here on the south of 10E was a part of the Hammond 5th filing, which came before you all in 2020. Originally, the Hammond 6th filing and the Hammond 5th filing were combined as one. However, staff asked the applicant to pull the 6th filing portion just so we can make sure that there was enough space for potential off-ramps coming off of 287, and as well as maintain the 5 acres of commercial that are supposed to be there. And so with that, the Hammond 5th filing was approved by you all, which was the single-family detached homes on Nicholson and Delvin and the other street south of 10E. Because staff asked the applicant to, kind of break this up as opposed to what they wanted to do to allow them to move forward and not hold their project up, we made an agreement with them that the open space, the parks, the subdivision identity, all the amenities that needed to be provided could count for both of them. So, for example, the park in the center of the Hammond 5th filing subdivision also counts towards the Hammond 6th filing subdivision. All the open space on the southern end of this project was also part of open space for the Hammond 5th filing project. They're allowed to count double because we were the reason that they weren't included together. To expand on that, the off-ramps, staff met with CDOT throughout 2020 a couple times and were able to gauge where the off-ramps would potentially go whenever they were needed and whenever they were built. While those specific locations aren't 100% locked in yet, we were able to determine based off engineers and CDOT that any off-ramps would not impact this subdivision if you were to approve it tonight with its current layout. It would also not impact the amount of commercial space required. They would still be able to have their minimum 5 acres of commercial space and not be inhibited by the off-ramps. One other thing to note is one of the reasons why, as you can see here, this is the first set of a little bit higher density development in this Hammond subdivision. North of 10E, it's all single-family detached homes, whereas, as you all are likely aware in our code today, at least 20% of housing types have to be different housing types. You don't have rows and rows of the same housing style, whether that's rows and rows of apartments, rows and rows of single-family detached, rows and rows of anything. So that was only included in the code in 2018, after the filings 1 through 4 were already approved and under construction. So they weren't bound by that code. However, filings 5 and 6 are bound by that code. So that's why, in order to make fifth filing whole, you have to have, or the applicant is forced to include an extra 20% of non-single family detached housing type. So as you can see here on your screen, this is the potential layout, a little bit zoomed out, because to give you some context, 10E runs kind of northwest to southeast angle on the screen there. And in the bolded area, you have 65 residential lots, all to be attached homes, all to be alley loaded, and to front Nicholson Street, to front 10E with a buffer space between the 10E right-of-way and the actual lot, and the front and interior park and the future commercial space. Here's a little bit further zoomed in view here. The interior area is all privately owned alley, privately owned and maintained. That the town will not be responsible for upkeep or plowing or anything like that when it snows. And here is the southern portion of the property. This is the landscape plan, which shows the open space and parks. So on the north end of this, or the top end of the screen here, you can see the small park they have in the middle there. This is a 0.65 acre park. And if you combine it with the 0.79 acre park in Hammond fifth filing, that gives you a total of 1.44 acres of parkland, which is more than the 0.95 required that we would require between the two proposals to have. And then the applicant also has provided 0.4 extra acres of open space within this Hammond 6 proposal. Those are mostly found within slivers in between the lots to kind of give them more space and some more elbow room, as well as on the end caps near the edge of the house. If you combine that with the 12.74 acres of open space, which is along that southern end of the property that Hammond fifth filing donated or dedicated, that almost almost triples the 4.7 required acres between the two projects. As for the open space elements, the applicants provided a community lawn within the Hammond 6 project, which is that park, which counts for 2 elements, and that'll be enough to satisfy both the Hammond 5th and the Hammond 6 open space requirements. As for subdivision identity, based off the amount of residential units proposed between the Hammond 5th and 6th filing projects, the applicant needed 7 different subdivision identity elements. They were actually able to get 12, I believe, between the pollinator plant. They're using a pollinator planting palette, a soft surface trail, a pocket park, a playground, and wood fencing within the Hammond 5th filing project, which were each worth 1 element. And as well, the applicant is also proposing alley-loaded streets in the Hammond 6th filing, which counts for 2 elements, bringing their total to 7. Excuse me, they only had 7 elements. Like I said, in the preferred land use map, it's characterized as urban residential with space for future commercial, as you can see identified here on this plan, with a gross density of around 11 units per acre and an alley-loaded walkable development pattern. Staff feels this project satisfies the preferred land use map and the comprehensive plan that was adopted earlier this year. And then to get into the preliminary plat criteria, in order to approve it, you have to be able to find these 7 items. The first one is that the preliminary plat represents a functional system of land use and is consistent with the rationale and criteria set forth in the code. Staff believes that it represents a functional system of land use thanks to the expansion of the existing street network, building off of Nicholson, utilizing the north/west side of that street, as well as creating an additional park area, creating an additional amenity for the residents of Berthoud to enjoy. Number 2, the application is consistent with the approved concept plan and incorporates the town's recommendations and any conditions of approval. Like I said just before, the applicant is proposing about somewhere between 9 to 12 dwelling units an acre, which is, also has the walkable streets, the little bit denser housing type, alley-loaded streets. It, pretty much fits the preferred land use preferred land use plan within the comp plan to a T. Number 3, the land use mix within the project conforms to Berthoud's zoning district map and preferred land use map and furthers the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan and port plan. So the land use mix within the project conforms to the zoning district map as attached single family and townhomes are used by right within our R4 zoning district, as is the density proposed. The land use mix conforms to the preferred land use map and furthers the goals of the comprehensive plan. I think I've already went over that. And then finally, the land use mix conforms to the port plan by creating the additional park and installing sidewalks on the south side of 10E and also creating a new soft surface trail system. Number 4, the utility and transportation design is adequate given existing and planned capacities for those systems. Our staff and development team have determined that our services are more than adequate to meet a potential 65 new lot subdivision in this area especially. They will be able to tie in seamlessly to the existing utilities in the area without any delays or interruptions. Number 5, negative impacts on adjacent land uses, including but not limited to solar axis, heat, dust, glare, traffic, and noise have been identified and satisfactorily mitigated. So one of the bigger things that came up and that we noticed was that with a lot of interior lots that don't have any street frontage, parking may become an issue and may bleed into existing neighborhoods, whether that's the Hammond 5th filing or across 10E. So staff's worked with the applicant. We've actually worked with them to install an additional 20 off-street parking spaces for overflow or visitor parking, in addition to the 2 minimum required spaces on each lot. So you can kind of see them here where my cursor is on the south end. There's a couple spaces down here. There will be spaces on each entrance into the subdivision, one off of Nicholson and one off of 10E. There are 4 spaces in each entrance. And there's also spaces on this northern end here. Partner that with the available street parking on Nicholson. This is more than an adequate amount of parking. This is almost an extra half of a space per unit, or per dwelling unit, excuse me. Number 6, there is a need or desirability within the community for the applicant's development, and the development will help achieve a balance of land use and or housing types within Berthoud. So as you guys are aware, Berthoud does not really currently have a large inventory of attached homes, and almost none exists in the Hammond subdivision as is, other than the attached homes in Prairie Star and the Heron Lakes development north of 287. There really isn't in this area around 10E. So this would, help create an additional housing type, help create a different product type for somebody who's looking for something maybe not as big as single family detached or something a little cheaper than a single family detached. So this is, helps fill a void that Berthoud's currently lacking, especially in the northern part of town. And then finally, number 7, how the applicant has addressed comments received from the public during the public comment portion of the process. And so the most prominent comment, which you have all the comments in your packet that we received during this process, but the most prominent comment staff received was in relation to the limited parking that the subdivision would provide. Originally, there wasn't any proposed overflow or visitor parking. Staff's worked with the applicant and, like I said, we were able to provide an additional 20 spaces, which is already a third of an extra space per dwelling unit. These lots aren't very large, as you can see here, so the houses won't, or the homes won't be very large, so it's unlikely they'll be throwing grand parties or having, more than just a couple of people over at a time, which really negates the need for having plenty of on-street parking. They're not gonna be the ones hosting the Super Bowl parties, more or less, more likely than not. But it is important, you do have grandma coming to visit you, you do have the in-laws, you do have children, and then the Amazon, FedEx, UPS delivery drivers also need a place to park whenever they're inside making their deliveries so they don't block the flow of traffic within the alleys. So the additional 20 spaces along with the spaces on Nicholson that are just typical street parking would be, staff feels and that our engineers feel would be plenty enough to be able to mitigate this potential harmful interaction. The preliminary plat, the initial submittal was sent out to all property owners within 500 feet of the property site. and as well as invitation to come to this meeting and the Planning Commission meeting last week. Legal ad was published, and all of the comments staff received at any time throughout the development process has been provided to you all within your packets. The Planning Commission on Thursday of last week recommended approval with the staff recommended conditions at a vote to 6-0, a unanimous vote, or excuse me, 7-0 vote. No, I take that back, 6-0 vote. There was only 6. I'm sorry. And so all in all, staff recommends a motion to approve the Hammond 6 filing preliminary plat, finding that it satisfies section 30-6-107B, which is found on page 4 and 5 of your staff report, with the following conditions. Number 1, all lots abutting an alley are to be rear loaded from the alley. Number 2, all sidewalks are detached. And number 3, more landscaping is installed at the end of the northeastern alley adjacent to lot 14 to better screen the alley from County Road 10E. Real quick before I turn it over to the applicant, or turn it back to you, Mayor Pro Tem, I do want to point out that when the staff report was written, we hadn't received an updated submittal from the applicant. However, between then and today, we received an updated submittal that satisfactorily mitigates recommendations number 2 and 3. As you can see here, it's kind of tough to see because it's so far zoomed in, but this is on that corner. This is 10E and this is Nicholson. The issue that staff had was that this alley that comes through here on this from southwest to northeast kind of dead ends. You can kind of see it here, dead ends into County Road 10E. We were concerned with the headlights of vehicles and then overall, noise coming from 10E that could potentially have negative impacts. And so we worked with the applicant to install more trees and more bushes to be able, taller bushes to be able to mitigate this and be able to make sure that, the headlight glare doesn't reach the streets, the noise from the street does not impact the neighborhood. There are only, I think 4 or 5 lots that would be driving past, down to this dead end, but we still felt it was necessary and that it would overall enhance the quality of the community. But the applicant's already mitigated that. And the other one regards the parking, or the sidewalks. Initially, there's sidewalks here coming in, accessing off of County Road 10E were attached. And they've since detached them to create the lawn that we all like to see. So with that, I turn it back to Mayor Pro Tem, and I will be here to answer any questions from you or the public, if you have any. Thank you.
All right. Is the applicant here this evening?
All right, can you guys hear me? Is the volume okay? Just barely. Let's see. Okay, I'll be sure to speak up. Is that a little better? Okay, great. And I'm going to share my screen so I can show you the presentation. So give me just a moment. All right, and are you able to see the screen? Of course. My name is Kristen Turner. I'm with TB Group, and we've done the planning for this project. Our address is 444 Mountain Avenue in Berthoud. So let me know when you're able to see the plan, and then I'll get it. Okay, perfect. Always takes a minute to get set up, so I'm glad it's all working. Well, anyways, thank you for being here tonight to hear about this project. We were really happy to be able to bring this back. As Adam mentioned, this portion of Hammond had really been envisioned originally as part of the 5th filing. So this entire area was planned cohesively. And we totally understand the request to remove it from 5th filing so that everybody had the time to evaluate the possibility for ramps, where those might land, and how that might impact the commercial area as well. So we held off on the townhomes, and now that progress has been made on those ramps, and we understand that there's plenty of room within the right of way, and it won't be impactful to the site. We are just glad to be able to bring these townhomes back and present them to you. So can you guys see the mouse when I move it, or the hand, I guess? Okay, great. It will just help me to be able to point things out to you. So we have 61 single family attached units here. These are fee simple for sale lots. And as Adam mentioned, these are all located in the R4 portion of the Hammond property. And so I'm just going to give you a quick tour of the site, and then we'll take it from there with any questions that you might have. So these are all alley loaded townhome product, which means our front doors will be facing County Road 10E. Front doors will be facing Nicholson, and then the remainder of the front doors will be facing the open space and the park amenity. So you'll either have street frontage or you'll have park frontage. And what this is going to do is it's going to provide a really nice pedestrian experience for the folks that live here. You'll have continuous walks along the front doors, and for anybody who's ever walked down the street with little kids, it's really quite nice to know you don't have to worry about the potential of a car backing out of their driveway as they're riding their bike out in front of you. So it's just really nice that you can have that walking experience. There's no interruptions. You get more landscape look without all of those curb cuts. And that walk will extend all the way down 10E. It wraps around Nicholson. And then there's also an extension of that walk that wraps around the southern portion of the property and loops all the way to those buildings that front along the open space and the park space as well. So you end up getting a continuous loop all the way around this community. In addition to some extra trails that will cut through the site in different locations, so that there is access out to 10E and Nicholson Street without having to walk through that entire loop. As you can see, these are private drives located behind the units for access to the garages. And we also have visitor parking that is sprinkled throughout the site, some at the north, a little bit in this entry drive off of 10E, some additional parking off the entry drive from Nicholson, and another little lot down at the southern end. So it's distributed throughout the site so that folks have some additional parking for friends and family when they come to visit. And overall, this site is providing more than double the parking that is required for it. So we feel really good about the parking that's being provided for the folks that live here, as well as any visitors that may visit. All right, let me get into the next slide for you. Okay. All right. So this is an enlargement of our pocket park that I wanted to share with you. So as you can see, it's our pocket park and also our community lawn area. We are showing a playground area here that will have play equipment. And then there's some additional trails that sort of weave around and wrap through the site so that folks have different opportunities to loop around in this area. We do have several locations for seating through this area, as well as some enhanced planting areas and planting beds. And we are utilizing a plant pollinator palette throughout this entire site. So rather than focusing it in one location, we're incorporating it into all of our planting beds, both within the pocket park, also located at our entrances along the streets, and the planting palette will also be used for foundation planting for the buildings so that we can really maximize the use of it. So we've got a couple of representational images here for you of playground equipment, our walks, a big open lawn, great place to kind of spill out of your front door, be able to throw a Frisbee, let the kiddos run around, or just hang out and read a book. And those enhanced planting areas as well to add some pops of color and visual interest. So that is what you're seeing here. And so overall, when we look at this site, I'm gonna scroll forward again just so you can see the entire site. All right. So Adam had mentioned these, but just to circle back on them, because I think they're really, I missed my page. Here we go. I think they're really key to this southern portion of the Hammond subdivision is that, you know, overall the parks that we're providing are just a little bit less than double what is required for this area. The open space is almost triple than what is required for this area. So really a lot of amenities in this area that we're providing for the residents that live here, as well as anybody that may be passing through. I did want to mention that we did have one neighbor show up at Planning Commission and ask some questions about site distance from these streets. And we had one planning commissioner who asked some follow-up questions about it as well. So I just wanted to let you know that we have, since Planning Commission last week, gone back and double-checked the site distance triangles on this site, and we have confirmed that there are no buildings that are landing within those site distances. I can also confirm that the planting in the planting beds on the corners they are all meeting the requirements for the site distance triangles as well. The one piece that I have not had an opportunity to check since we were just there last week is some of the trees in the tree lawn. And so we will be double checking if there are any trees that need to be relocated from the tree lawn that may be landing in the site distance triangle as part of any revisions that we end up submitting back to the town to review. So I just wanted to point out that that was something that had come up, and we have looked into it and confirmed that it is not a concern with the layout for the site. So with that, I'm just gonna wrap this up and say, you know, when you look at this little piece, it is a very small addition to the subdivision, but we really wanted to maximize the positive impacts that this addition will add to both the subdivision and the community. I think when you look at this, the way we're doing that is the product type that we're providing. We are seeing and hearing from folks that this single family attached type product is something that is really needed in Berthoud and is lacking at this time. From an ecological standpoint, the fact that we're providing these pollinator plant palettes that we're integrating throughout the entire community, it is, you know, that plant palette is used in 5th filing. I believe that we used it in some of the filings north of Tenney as well. It ends up providing larger corridors to support pollinator species. And then as additional subdivisions throughout Berthoud are developed and also incorporate this into their plans, it'll provide that much larger of a corridor for those pollinator species, you know, to move through Berthoud, which is great. We're adding this additional pocket park over in this area. As you can see, there are several pocket parks throughout Hammond in the southern portion of the site. So we have this one that's proposed in 6th filing. There's another one that is already approved as part of 5th filing. You can see there is another one up here in 4th filing. And so what it does is it starts to distribute the pocket parks throughout the community. You know, for folks that just want to spill out their front door, they have an opportunity there. And for folks that want to walk a little bit farther for something different to do, they have a couple of different options to choose from. And I, for one, can say, especially when my kids were little, they used to vote on which pocket park around us they wanted to go to based on different play equipment and the things that they provided. So it's kind of fun to have those opportunities to just get out and expand a little bit there. As I mentioned, we're adding those pedestrian walks that wrap all the way around the subdivision with additional passages, you know, to move through the site efficiently. And just to note that this sidewalk system will also connect across the street. And then right here, we already have a connection that's approved as part of 5th filing with the extension of a trail system that runs through this open space and ultimately connects to the trail system that runs along Berthoud Parkway and then hooks into the larger port trail that's shown on the north side of County Road 10E as well. Community lawn is something new that we're providing within the subdivision as well. So like I said, really trying to kind of maximize that positive impact with this little addition to the subdivision. So with that, I will stop my presentation and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, Trustee Hardy.
The allotted parking spaces, are those counting, I'm assuming there's garages on these. So is it counting the garages or is it counting just the driveway space off the street?
The visitor parking spaces are the ones that are shown parallel parking off of the entry stubs. and then the parking right here and right here. In addition to that, we do have garage spaces for all of the units, and we have driveway spaces for all of the units as well.
So each unit could potentially park 2 cars in the garage and 2 in the driveway?
Correct.
Okay. That's all.
And that's all? All right. Trustee Grace?
I guess, because I didn't have the preliminary file, the paperwork essentially we're looking at here in my packet to look through, so I guess the first question I have is that kind of brown ball near the top, that kind of got breezed over. Could you explain what that is?
Sure, absolutely. That's a great question. So this is an emergency turnaround for fire. It is a temporary condition. In the future, when the commercial will develop, there will be some sort of connection so that there is full access for fire. Since we don't know what that design looks like right now, it does serve the purpose as allowing those trucks to turn around and to be able to easily leave the site without having to back out. So that is the point of it, and it is temporary and will someday be removed when there are additional connections in the future.
I appreciate you guys, trying to beautify a lot of the green space between these buildings. What do you have any kind of, I guess, pictures of what it's going to look like, from the street level? I'm having a hard time kind of visualizing what these units are going to look like from the street and from the alley. Is that something you have available to you right now?
Sure, we don't right now. Since this is a preliminary plat, we're working on kind of the horizontals, how everything fits. And then the architectural will be reviewed and approved by staff as part of building permits. So it'll be required to meet all of the newly adopted architectural standards. But that's not a level of detail that we've really gotten into at the preliminary plat level.
Okay. So I'm trying to mentally, these are paired houses. So each garage can fit 2 cars in each paired home. So if one unit has 2 cars that can fit in that garage, or is it one unit has 1 car that goes in the garage?
Sure. So we have a mix of the unit types, and primarily we have 2-car garages for each of the buildings. So we have 61 buildings, and we've got all but 4 of those have 2-car garages. There are 4 units that have a single-car garage. And then for each unit, however many car garages they have, that's typically what you can apply to their driveway parking as well. So if you have the width for 2 cars to park in your garage, you also have 2 cars that can park in the driveway.
Because I know Mary's Farm, and like walking around and being out there, a lot of these alley loads, sometimes it gets a little narrow. So I have a sinking feeling that people might be parking on Nicholson Street to help the overflow, to keep things closer. I guess where your mouse is right now, if you could move it to the left just a little bit, those 4 units, kind of at the very, very top, is there a chance that you could possibly move those towards the edge of the property and then move those 6 parking spots that got kind of squeezed in at the very end and move those more center? Is that something that's possible to kind of open up some more space, possibly even near the park? Because right now that park looks like if anybody outside of this area wants to go play there, they have to go find one of those spots and then hike their way out there, or park off of County Road 10 or Nicholson.
Sure. So the reason that they were located at the end of the drive was to kind of maximize, the extents that the parking are located. Because there is parking actually located right here, this would allow folks to park right in these spaces and just take the sidewalk and zip right into the park area. If we were to move them into the center area, I think there could be a little bit of disruption to that connection to the park. But it also kind of slides all the parking into this one zone rather than, the intent was to try and distribute them a little bit more. So I guess what I'd suggest is this would be the most ideal parking if somebody was driving from farther away and wanting to park to be able to access this park location to come and hang out.
Right, and as a main entrance and exit, the northern entrance and exit into it, you can't put too much parking around there because people are going to be coming and going all the time.
And this is going to serve as a right in, right out. So it won't be a full movement access, and it'll be parallel parking, just like you would see on any typical street, just like you would see on Nicholson Street, for example. So this area here is what is being reserved for future commercial development. Yes, so in general, CDOT's going to want to utilize their right-of-way is what we learned from the work that the town did with CDOT over the last year. So in general, they're going to want to use this area. We have a small corner here, which they may potentially impact. You can see we've included a note, conceptual future right-of-way, and it's just this little corner. Originally, when we brought fifth filing forward, we weren't sure how impactful to the commercial area that may be. And that is why we held on the townhomes until we could understand that better. So it's a little corner that's being carved out, but they may or may not end up impacting them. It's just kind of being held as to ensure that those ramps have sufficient space should they move forward. Okay,
is it only off ramps to get up to 87, or are there gonna be on ramps to go with them as well? Or do you know?
So hopefully I'll say this correctly, and I'll ask Adam to correct me if I don't. I believe that it would be a ramp off of 287 onto 10E, but there would not be a ramp that accesses back onto 287 because of concerns with the proximity to that big curve right here. The other side would potentially have both on and off ramps, but the Hammond side would just have the ramp for folks traveling northbound to come off of 287. And Adam, please do correct me if I've got that wrong.
He's correct, with the curb access and then also Bertha Parkway just being one turn away. The expectation would be that if you wanted to get back on 287 and go north, you would just hop over on 10E to Bertha Parkway, take that north and go right at the stoplight up there.
Okay. That's all my questions at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Hyman.
Yeah, so this is not a question, well, I guess my one question on the subdivision is, so everything to the west is gonna be commercial?
This portion here, I think this is basically the boundary, and below is detention area. So this is really that 5-acre portion that's reserved for commercial.
Question for our staff is, how do we feel about front doors facing future commercial? That seems a little odd.
So when commercial was to go in, they would be required to landscape and provide an extensive buffer to any residential, just like the Heron Lakes Commons subdivision that went in, or is going in right now in relation to the Heron Lakes townhomes. They'll have to provide, any commercial will have to provide, evergreen trees that are tall enough to block any potential glare or any potential negative impacts. They'll have an extended setback from the residential area, and overall they'll be far enough recessed back that all the negative impacts will be mitigated as best as possible.
Okay. So also for you, Adam, I wasn't aware that we were counting some of these narrow slivers as part of the overall open space. Is that something new, or is that how we've always been doing it?
So we have the ability to count them, whether or not we determine they are. These narrow slivers have the trails that connect, or the walkways, excuse me, that connect either the alley or the parking spaces to either the front doors facing away from the area or towards the park. Typically, if it's just dead space, like on the end caps and stuff, we usually don't count them in other subdivisions. These just because they have the extra space.
Okay, that makes sense. And then this is more of a procedural question. So I don't believe, my packet didn't have any of the, renderings. It just had the staff didn't even have the plat, it just had the staff report. So is that a problem? I mean, because we don't have any of the public comment or the planning commission or any of that.
Well, it's all been presented to you tonight.
Okay.
If you feel that you don't have enough information based on what has been presented tonight, that would be a different question. But the fact that there is something that might normally be in your packet but wasn't tonight, you can certainly ask about those things, but that in and of itself wouldn't be a defect.
Okay, well, can you kind of summarize the public comment?
Sure. I think that there was 7 responses throughout both sets of public comment, the first one being the initial submittal, the second one being the advertisement for the meeting tonight. Most of them either dealt with either not wanting growth and not wanting the subdivision, not wanting either because they didn't want any growth or because they thought the attached product was too dense for the area. A lot of individuals stated that they didn't like the open space being gobbled up. A lot of questions about parking, a lot of questions about making sure that it doesn't impact the negative responses to the north. And then there was also questions at the Planning Commission meeting last week about the water pressure. Apparently a lot of the Hammond residents have issues with their water pressure. We've done further research since then and asked Ken Matthews about that. And in October of this year, the fire department tested all the fire hydrants in the area and they were on par. They were producing 70 PSI of water pressure, which the average in town is about 70 to 90. It really doesn't become a problem until you get back below 50. What we think the issue is, or what Ken thinks the issue is that a lot of the home builders in the area might have put on, and I have it in my notes here, PRVs, which are pressure release valves within the meter pits, which is used to help you curb your water usage. It kind of puts a cap on the amount of water pressure that can come in or the amount of water that comes in so that your water bill is lower and you aren't using as much water. However, the negative impacts is that usually when in your sinks or your showers or hoses, the pressure is usually not as high. So all those, other than the growth perspective, which I can't answer, and the density is your opinion, but the applicant, provided the extra parking spaces to mitigate it. The water pressure impact is not an issue caused by additional development. It's an issue that Ken Matthews thinks is likely caused by the PRVs. As for the density, they fall within the allowed density within the R4 residential district or R4 mixed use district. And then the ODP was approved in 2008 that allows the growth to happen in this area. So those were the staff or the public comments regarding to this project.
And Mayor Pro Tem, point of order, Adam, were there comments from the public that were dated for tonight's meeting?
There were no
Thank you. So that summary, I think, would suffice.
Okay, perfect. That was all I had.
I just have one clarifying to my question. I didn't quite hear it, but I wanted to see if it was said or not. When the calculation was done for the number of parking spaces, was that just for the garage spaces, or did it take into account the 2 in the driveway and 2 in the garage?
So the number 20 only comes from the off-street additional parking spaces. So it's the 2 on each, or the 4 on each entrance into the alley system, the 4 on the northern end of the alley system, and then the remainder, I think it's 12 or 16 on the southern end.
Is there like a required number of parking spaces? Per
We require
building?
1.5 off-street spaces per each unit in the R4.
Off-street.
Off-street, yes. So as Kristen mentioned during her presentation, all but 4 of the proposed housing types will have a 2-car garage. The other 4 will have 1-car garages.
So we're meeting our number of off-street parking plus
Additional
each unit has
20
4
on
units
top of
to
that.
park on top of it as well.
That is
So there's
correct.
more than enough parking then.
That is.
Is the 0.5 for the golf carts?
Yeah, that's 0.25.
Smart cars only?
Oh, also, I don't know if I noticed this during my presentation, but the 6th filing will also have a wood fencing in all the rear, just like the 5th filing does as well, or will have as well as those go up. So was counted in their subdivision identity elements along with the fifth filing, but just wanted to make that a note.
I think we got rid of the white vinyl fencing right after that went up.
Yeah.
Yep, they will not be putting that up within their subdivision.
They'll regret that in a few years when the sun turns it into broken plastic.
Melted plastic.
And the echo from them.
We're happy with the wood fencing that we've been proposing.
I'm done.
Okay. Due to the density of this, I'm sure traffic studies are gonna be continuing. I guess, are there any other traffic considerations that need to be done on County Road 10E or Nicholson Street? Stoplights, more stop signs turning County Road 10E into a four-way, dragging that all the way out to Bertha Parkway, turning that into four-way. 80 units, assuming it's 2 people per unit, plus or minus. That's 160 people, adding, 80 some odd cars, give or take. That's a significant amount of traffic increase that could kind of change how the flow goes out there. I know that the alley is gonna be controlled by the Metro District in terms of upkeep and all that stuff, but I'm just wondering on the town side, what is gonna be done on our side for mitigating traffic or congestion issues there?
Sure, and I think the applicant's traffic engineer is online right now, but I just want to clarify real quick, it's only 61 units, not 80 units, so.
61 units.
Yeah, 61 units. Within the traffic study, there wasn't a need found to install a stoplight. County Road 10E is listed as a collector within our new comprehensive plan map, which took into account the development of, in accordance with the comp plan, so the urban residential at the little higher density within this area. A collector is only 2 lanes, like 10E is now. The only real, I guess, different things that were involved were the in and out, or right in, right out entrance into the northern alleys off of 10E is one thing. You won't be able to turn left out of there. You won't be able to turn left in there. And then the additional sidewalks for pedestrian connectivity on the south side of 10E. If the applicant wishes to speak further on that.
Yeah, I'd say generally, traffic studies have been done kind of for the site as a whole as we've worked through the different filings. And so it's actually been a higher density that's always been assumed for this portion of the site. And as it's developed at a slightly lower density than what was assumed in those studies. Each time we bring a filing forward, a new traffic study is done that looks at the specific proposal. And so any recommendations that were in that traffic study have already been implemented into these plans and are being shown on our construction documents.
I guess, and I don't think this actually is relative to this filing, but that southern exit, the only place you can turn left, it looks like it empties out straight and pointing into somebody's front yard. Is that, I guess that's just, it's the same problem, just kind of different filing.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, it doesn't line up directly with the center of the property. It's kind of off-centered just a little bit. I imagine that would be to mitigate this impact, but
Yeah.
That is correct.
Okay. That's all I just thought of. But I do see lying there. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, I just have 1 or 2. So I'm glad that you guys put a pocket park in there. I think that's highly desirable when you've got a multifamily product. It looks like it's well laid out. I do have the same question about the distance for those 2 clusters of buildings that are on the southwest corner. Yes, those right there, where they are going to be right up against the commercial. My concern would be to put a little bit more of a buffer in there for them. It doesn't appear that that buffer is very large from their front porches. I mean, we have to really consider, this is the front of their homes. And so, some sort of buffer that would not be obviously like a street, since there's parkland all around there. That would be my one concern. And then, the other question that I have for you is the soft surface trails. where are those? Because sidewalks obviously are considered trails as well. Where are the soft surface trails in this plat?
Sure. So there's a soft surface trail that runs through this large open space. It connects up. And then within this area, so everything obviously that accesses the front doors and along the roads is going to be a concrete type walk. But we have mixed some soft surface trails through this area as well, so that you get a little bit of a mix. But the primary trail is located right along here.
If someone were to, if they were to walk all the way around the perimeter, including that soft surface trail and then back up, do you know what the distance would be on that?
I don't know. I can pull that and I can forward that information to you. I suspect it would be a pretty good walking loop for somebody who is looking to, you know, get a run in or get some, you know, a speed walk in, that it would, you know, kind of smaller, there's kind of escalating loops that are available, you know, if you wanted to do just sort of this area, or if you wanted to incorporate all the way around the townhomes, or if you then wanted to loop in this larger loop. It could be a nice little fitness area. But I'd be happy to pull that dimension and send that to you.
Yeah, I would just be curious, because it is nice that you guys have kind of made it into loops, and people do tend to like to walk in loops rather than out and back, so I appreciate that you guys did that.
Absolutely.
Okay, I do not have any other questions, so if we're all good here, then I shall close the questions and we'll open up the public hearing. Is there anyone? Yes, Lynn, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Lynn Larson. I live at 205 Huddle Street. This is the second time in a week I've seen this presentation. Tonight's presentation initially raised a concern for me on the west side of the development, but I think all the questions the trustees have asked have received the answers that address my concerns. That it's not only going to be an open space, it's going to be commercial, so there will need to be buffers in between, and I think you guys have taken care of those concerns I was thinking about during your discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I don't see anyone else in the audience here. Is there anyone on the phone, or I know I saw some stuff flashing up in the comments. Some questions popped up.
Lonnie's got his hand up.
Okay, Lonnie.
3 minutes.
Oh, Lonnie Stevens, 316 East Iowa Avenue. Anyway, the only two questions, I heard Mike say something about metro districts. Has this been approved for a metro district? First question.
There is an existing metro district for this subdivision.
Okay, it just seems to be small for a metro district, okay, but that answers that question. And second, just because of everybody's issues and concerns about affordable housing, I'm kind of curious what the price point of these units will be.
That's a great question, and we do have Jeff Mark on the call, and he will probably be able to answer that better than I can.
All right, thank you.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good evening. I'm the applicant and the landowner. We have a home building company that's going to build these units. They could better speak to that, but I can tell you, because we've built some of these in northern Colorado and all the way south to Colorado Springs. They'll be in the high 3s to low 4s, generally speaking, 400,000 price range, which is generally speaking $75,000 to $100,000 less than the single family product that is currently being offered in Hammond Farm.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all I have. I will, since I can't make a comment, I'm not going to. All right. Thank you.
I do not see that there is anyone wishing to speak in the public hearing on the Zoom format. I do see the second half of the last question asking if there are plans to extend the sidewalk from the Hammond neighborhood to the main front of town.
I guess I would ask point of order. I mean, I think that, you know, you can decide, Mayor Pro Tem, how you want to deal with that, but you've got an anonymous comment, essentially, which is a little bit different from
And someone
what you've
coming up and
entertained.
saying their name and address. Got it. So I guess what we need to do then is, for those people who did ask questions or throw out comments, if they would like to officially be recognized, they will need to raise their hand in the Zoom meeting controls or send a chat message indicating that you would like to speak so that we can have your name and address for the public record.
Mayor Pro Tem, there are not any requests to speak.
All right. All right, with that then, we'll close the public hearing. And now we can open up for discussion. What do you guys think? I'll go first. Compared to the first filing of Hammond, I think this is, I think the applicant has done an excellent job of adding and adhering to our new development code. I think that staff has done a good job of trying to implement those changes into this new filing. We do have a need, in my mind, in our town for different products, and I'm glad that they're doing something that is a little higher density. It sure seems like townhomes are a great addition to the town. They're a good, you know, product for people who maybe can't or don't want a huge 3,000, 3,500 square foot home. In addition, I am really pleased to see that staff got them to, you know, do the detached sidewalks and to put the pollinators or you know, to have them adhere to our new standards. I think that they've done a good job with that. Again, my only concern is those two clusters of buildings that are on the southwest side that are going to back up to the commercial. You know, just I can see complaints coming forward, you know, 3 years from now when these homes are sold and then a commercial development comes in and, you know, there are some very upset people saying, I thought I was next to open space. So, you know, I mean, and it's like buyer beware. However, if there's something that we can do to mitigate it or ensure that you know, these people are aware that they are buying lots or they're buying homes that are eventually going to face commercial.
They may not always have the great, wonderful view.
Yeah, they're not always gonna have that unbelievably beautiful view, so. Yes, Mr. Olinger?
Yeah, so one idea that you could do here is make a recommendation or an additional recommendation with your motion, if you choose to approve it, that when the next filing comes in to create those commercial lots, that they provide an enhanced buffer or enhanced setback or enhanced landscape buffer to the residential lots in the southwest of the site.
That's what I was gonna say in my comments, because previously, my experience with planning commission, just here, we've been able to do that as we build and stack, we start seeing what's going next to it and go, well, yeah, we didn't provide enough here at the time, but now that we're building this, we need to add it here. So either we do it now or we do it later. We just have to remember that the planning commission of the future or the board of the future also recognizes that when that commercial starts going in, that we build those buffers in there. And right now, we still don't have an idea what that's gonna look like, you know. Do they wanna put a road there, or do they wanna put 50 feet of green space? Because we went through this the same way up on the north side in Prairie Star, where they're building a new commercial development next to those houses. They actually pushed the commercial back to give more room to the houses, so yeah, that doesn't concern me, but the disclosure when they build these houses really needs to be upfront with the real estate offices that are selling them, that, hey, everything to the west is platted to be commercial, be prepared. It's not gonna be a mountain view for your entire purchase. That really needs to be upfront.
Yeah.
As well as the metro district.
Well, if you're buying a house that looks out on an open field next to a highway, and you think that that's gonna remain open space, then you're not doing your due diligence, in my opinion.
Well, we hear it all the time.
We hear it all the time.
Board meetings.
Yeah.
Every year.
That doesn't really change the
I
fact
didn't realize
that
that's-
you should do your due
I
diligence.
didn't realize
It's
that
not up
street
to-
stuff that went into the field was just gonna become a road one day, so.
I don't
Who
really
would've thunk,
think
you know,
that we
but-
have to plan around that type of thinking personally, but
I will say, practically speaking, when that development, when and if that commercial development occurs, we would never allow them to put like the back of a store, 15 feet from the front door of a house.
Yeah.
I mean, so, a lot of that gets caught naturally, and we have some restrictions in our code about, buffers and height changes and architecture and things between different types of land uses, like commercial and residential, that will cover that. But if we ever let like a service entrance get put 15 feet from the front door of that house, I would expect that you would fire me and our staff, and that would be a terrible decision.
And that's all in our code right now, anyway, if I remember.
We've got a
right.
lot, we do have a lot of language in that code. I think it's good though, we all recognize, and I think it's good that it's discussed publicly, that there is going to be an expected buffer between those residential units and any future commercial development.
So right now,
And I think making a recommendation in your motion is not a bad idea, so it's officially in the record too.
as of right now, if there were, regardless if there's a motion or not, any commercial site that would be going up adjacent to or bordering on residential property would be required to have at least 20-foot setback and also have a enhanced landscape buffer. And then also the residential property itself has a 10-foot front setback to the front of the house regardless. So from the front door, front porch to the building itself would be at minimum 30 feet, as well as an enhanced landscape buffer.
And 30 feet, just for my knowledge, is
30 feet is probably from me to Kurt, maybe a little bit farther. So it's not, I would say that 30 feet is not an excessively large distance.
Yeah.
But again, I think we deal with some of those things by not allowing the back of a building to be, the service entrance to a building to be facing that. Not even frankly, even some of the side frontage.
You'd encourage is more like 20 feet.
It might be 20, yeah. But I think slightly farther back than Kurt is from your chair.
I'm 6 feet, so about 5 feet.
Taller than Adam's taller than 6 feet. If you just lay down, we'll mark your profile 6 times.
But they're not.
So it's a little more than.
Super scientific.
All right.
Yeah, so, my comment on that is that, one of well-recognized practices in good planning is to taper land uses from less intense to more intense. So having this attached product between the single family and the commercial is actually a good transition. So I would support this.
My comment, it's one of those where seeing a lot of this stuff crowded up, instinctually I kind of recoil at it just because, that high amount of density is, I understand it's necessary. I understand the design purpose of it. Still, when you see that much stuff together, one thing goes wrong, it can snowball. And I think the staff actually did a really good job mitigating that as best as possible, given the guidelines and given our code requirements. I'm also really glad that we can actually have that last little stipulation in our motion to have that buffer on the southwest side, because that was a good catch. Having somebody's front yard end up on the backside of like an Arby's dumpster area, probably not a good call, but I'm in favor of it. Just seems like you were saying, so it's a good transition from single family on into more dense needs.
All right, any other comments? Okay, so would we like to add another condition to the end of, to this motion? We have right now on the motion, all lots abutting an alley are to be rear loaded from the alley, which they've done. All sidewalks are detached, which they've done. More landscaping is installed at the end of the northeast alley adjacent to lot 14 to better screen the alley from County Road 10E. And do we want to put in wording about
A buffer
the
and
buffer?
screening.
Providing additional
Buffer and
buffer
screening.
southwest units backing up to commercial zoning. I'm not sure how to say that legally.
Yeah, I think the recommendation from your staff is, because this is a subdivision for the property that is the subject of the plat, what the staff is recommending is a recommendation be added, and I think the distinction being that you cannot condition property that isn't subject to this plat, but you could add a recommendation, and I thought that Adam had it worded pretty well, so I'm gonna ask him to redo that.
I guess that when the commercial is developed, that it provides enhanced landscape buffer and spacious buffer, I guess, to the lots in the southwest corner of the property.
So be it.
As stated.
Hopefully Michelle got it down.
All right, so I believe we do have our motion. Would someone like to move?
Read it, or do we read it officially, or?
I think we do need to read it
Yes,
officially.
I think it, the record is clear if you read the motion as, with the conditions and the recommendation.
So I guess it's a move to approve, okay. Hammond 6 filing preliminary plat finding satisfies section 30-6-107B of the Bertha Municipal Code with following conditions. All lots abut an alley that are to be rear loaded from the alley. All sidewalks are detached. More landscaping is installed at the end of the northeastern alley adjacent to lot 14 to better screen the alley from County Road 10E. And providing staff a recommendation for additional landscape buffers to the southwest lots backing up to the commercial area.
I'll second.
All right, Trustee Grace has made a motion and Trustee Hardy has seconded it. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Hyman?
Yes.
Trustee Grace?
Yes.
Trustee Hardy?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dower?
Yes. All right, that concludes it. Thank you very much to the applicant. Thank you to Mr. Olinger. That was well done. Appreciate your time. All right, our last item before reports, our last item here is development code updates. Introduction by Mr. Kurt Freeze.
Hello. When I saw the agenda, I had a cot prepared in the room in there. And there's a shower. Chris and I were talking about just staying the night. So I was figuring this would be
You
like.
got off easy last meeting.
So.
Yeah, Lonnie's not here
We
now.
stayed till 11:30 the
Yeah,
last meeting,
so, anyway, this is a real treat, so, being here at 9:15, so, anyway.
You can always zoom in, Kurt.
Anyway, so we had a pretty long conversation at the last meeting, almost 3 hours of really good conversation about the development code. And, you know, I think it's good that we had that last presentation because it showed already the changes that have occurred from the last 3 development code changes in the last 3 years. And so you can see from the northern end of 10E, we have a very traditional suburban development plan that, you know, it is what it is. You could probably find it from here to, you know, Kansas to Ohio, you name the state, you're gonna find a very similar kind of development, pretty much around the country. There's nothing unique about it. But I think now that you see the southern end, that was all approved after we made the changes in 2018 and 19. And you can see that, the open space has tripled, the parks have doubled. Pollinator gardens, now we're like the only town doing, almost basically requiring pollinator gardens. We're just doing a lot of extra stuff, a lot of extra amenities, and the design is improving. And so the goal tonight is to do that, connecting with our comprehensive plan, is to create a more form-based code. So this is, like I said before, this is really, it's really kind of revolutionary in some ways for planning, especially for a small town. I believe it is. Adam and I have been working on it for a long time, so if you want to come up here, Adam, you can come up here. I think we kind of went over a lot of the main points, so I'll just stick with kind of the changes that we made from the last meeting. And a few things that I forgot to mention that, Adam was instrumental on helping out, because honestly, I didn't think about it. I forgot last time, so I had these, is we quintupled bicycle parking for the town, and we're using the Fort Collins standard. We also now require covered bicycle parking, so that's a big change for all multifamily and commercial developments. So just, when that commercial site gets approved, and had this been approved, before tonight or the 30-day period, we would have had required bicycle parking, and much more. But they did provide a bike rack in their park, so just so you know. So that was a little change I did not mention last time. And also max parking was a change that I think I kind of glossed over this 3 hours. But I think if you, think of the old development style, I'm thinking like, there's always like a Kmart or something like that where there was just a sea of parking built in the 80s, or like a Walmart that's around here. And they build it for that day after Thanksgiving where, it's packed for like a 3-hour period, and then that parking's never ever used except for just people using it for ride sharing or RVs or something. We're trying to limit that if we ever do get a big box store. So we did some research from around the country. Adam led that, and we have a pretty simple way to figure that out that we used from. So that's in there as well, just in case we ever do get a big box store. So I didn't mention those. But the things we changed based on your comments from the last meeting, first of all, Lonnie brought up the total square footage of the smaller detached cottages. We were reducing the parking standard, just kind of cleaning it up really from what's, I guess the easiest way to say this is right now, most of it is in Prairie Star. Prairie Star is a PUD, and they had their own specific parking standard. It's been working, so we basically extrapolated that into the code. But we, Wally had a good point that it should be limited on total square footage. So that was added. There was some comments about the need to have those cottages and small home products in the suburban residential. And so we made a footnote and kind of made this really easy that you can go down to 2,500 square feet to 3,500 square feet. If you do that, however, it has to be a rear loaded product or an alley loaded product like we see with David Gregg. So this is again in the suburban district. That would be allowed and provide that extra, housing type and attainable type that I think has been really well received and is, when they're mixed throughout the community, I think it works pretty well. That's what we're finding. So that was added. We also added townhomes that have to be alley loaded or rear loaded as well in the suburban district. Now, regular homes just in suburban, everything else in this new plan is all alley or rear loaded, which is a big change, I think, for any community here. So it's a very form-based thing. But we did do some restrictions on the garage size. But anyway, we did add the townhomes, just like what you saw with Hammond. So you could add that product and just get that diversity in a suburban environment. So that was added. We added the caliper, the larger caliper size for the landscape to 1.5 from 0.5, so in the front yard. So that was an addition to those sustainable development requirements. And then the major change, I think I covered all of the kind of the small changes that we talked about, yeah. was the conservation subdivision was dramatically revised. And Trustee Hammond kind of was, kind enough to lend some time and just his thoughts on that. But we essentially took, and based on the comments, especially from Maureen and Jeff, we took those comments and thought about how we could create a better district from what was proposed before. And I think, Jeff probably could make the comments as better than I could, but essentially, Larimer County updated their code recently, and when we did this in August, all these changes, we didn't have their updated code, so they made a lot of positive changes, so I contacted them, and they're okay with us using, their graphics. So if you notice, there's some new graphics which show kind of that buffer area, the concentration, so it shows graphically, I think, what your intention, especially Maureen's intention, was to kind of have the clustered development and keep the farmland in whole and keep it away from the major streets. They've allowed us to use that, and also they're fine with us using as much of the code as we'd like. So, about 80% of the code has been, essentially copied from theirs and repurposed into our code. Has obviously been changed around quite a bit because, they have a county and different zoning districts and requirements and mountainous regions, but, a lot of it is, basically their code. So those were the changes that were made. That's adding like buffer area, all the requirements of making sure that it's clustered. You can't, making sure that there's the extra curb cuts. And then the density is the big thing that, especially Trustee Hyman was really instrumental in bringing in water as well. So we're adopting, there has to be in residual land. So those are really the main things. So 80% of a development now has to be residual land. So, and then we're limiting the actual size of developed land to basically like a septic tank lot, which is, 2 acres or a little higher than 2 acres, really. So, as an example I put in there, for a quarter section, you're basically getting 16 lots. Quarter section is, 160 acres. So you're getting one lot per 10 acres, if you will, and those lots would be required to be clustered. There's some other interesting ideas. Adam actually, it's great to have some help with all the changes, but had an idea that maybe we should add like I-287 to kind of that view corridor requirement that they had in Larimer County. So we added that. So, if anybody ever did develop or wanted to save land around 287, like we do have that property due west that was kind of caught up in a lawsuit, but really at the corner here of 56 and 287 actually was preserved as open space. If anybody wanted to do that, they would be, we would be preserving some of those view corridors with that additional requirement is, I think, 150 feet. Yeah. So that's also positive. We're using the building envelopes just to kind of preserve, view corridors as well, so we don't have traditional setbacks and you can cluster more. And then, you have to bring either non-pot water or, basically you have to do a water study to prove that you have water sufficient to continue to farm that property. And so again, that was a great idea from Jeff that, I think we'd be the only one doing. And really we looked at, just when we did all of these codes, I mean, we took a few months. We did this with the comp plan and, we looked at every form-based code we could find, called the Form-Based Code Institute. But for cluster zoning, really, Larimer County is like, I mean, they're at the top of they're probably, if not the leading in the country, they got to be in the top 3. They have like basically the best code that I mean, it's much better than Boulder's. It's Boulder County's. It's really good. And so essentially, I feel like I'm taking Jeff's thunder here, but essentially the idea would be is that Weld County could. It's unlikely that someone would want to annex into Berthoud to do this because they can do it in Larimer County without much, they're basically getting something very similar to what the town is providing. And there's no reason for them to provide sewer for 16 lots. It just doesn't typically make sense from a financial standpoint. But in Weld County, you're only allowed to separate a lot 5 times. They don't have cluster housing. They don't really have a conservation subdivision. And if you remember from our comp plan, and I actually have it here, I can actually use this, I'm sorry. More than 2/3 of our GMA is actually, for this future land use plan, is actually in Weld County. And so it would open up all that area for conservation within the town of Berthoud. So it's a I think it's a positive development for anyone in Weld County that wants to save some land, yet still make, a little bit of money doing it, and have some development. So it's, I think a pretty unique idea that the board had, and hopefully we've accomplished that with the code that is before you. With that, this is just, for a planner, this is pretty exciting. I know there's really no press or anything on this, but I can't tell you how different this is. I mean, I know it's all just in tables and kind of just some images, but this is a dramatic change from your current code again. And again, it's for new districts. This is for the future. We're not zoning any property right now. So the future of Berthoud will have that resilient, sustainable, aesthetic plan that I think was your goal, in July when you did your executive session there, when you did your strategic planning session. And I think this is really going it's making a major step in that direction. And if there's problems in the future when the developers are trying to do this, I think we've got them all covered, but we can always come back before they're locked in, before they go into plating. We can, bring up some changes. But anyway, that's just kind of my little speech on this. But, again, I think it's pretty exciting for a small town, pretty exciting for me to work on. And Adam, and it's been, a big help for me to have Adam here and run some of these things by him, because, he's really young and tall, and he's doesn't miss much. And he just got out of school, so he's just heard all the most recent planning ideology and theology and whatever they're teaching, So I mean, so it's good to have that, and I think we're kind of now putting that in Berthoud, and we're far ahead of everyone else if we adopt this, in my opinion. So anyway, I'm sorry. Shut up. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
All right, I'd like to open it up to the board for questions.
How's it feel with Lonnie not here grilling you on some stuff?
I was thinking, how could I take his little packet of comments before like 11 or 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning? Maybe I was thinking at the breaks, maybe it could just be knocked off of his dais, but anyway, I'm sorry. There's no one else here.
It's all fine. All right, anyone else, any questions, comments, concerns?
No, I just think we just keep continuing what we've been doing, keep fixing those little holes, making those holes smaller, making our development code better. And I mean, just in the last 4 years, it's amazing how we've taken it from here to here and really got it dialed in, and just learning from the experience and getting things done. It's really been nice to fast pace it forward with some great thought. I mean, we make decisions pretty quickly here, and I think they've been pretty good decisions, and we're starting to see it finally. And
so no questions?
No questions, just comment, I'm sorry. I pulled a lot.
Go worried.
All right, so I will go ahead and we will open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience today who would like to speak? Okay, seeing none here. If there's anyone online, virtual participants, you can raise your hand in your Zoom meeting controls or send a chat message. If you'd like to speak, telephone callers can press *9 to indicate that you'd like to speak.
Mayor Pro Tem Dower, there are not any participants requesting to speak.
All right, with that, we'll close the public hearing. All right, now open it up for discussion, comments.
Just repeat my comment.
All right. So I think Kurt was giving me way too much credit. So I did appreciate Adam and Kurt meeting with me briefly, but the meeting started with Kurt and Adam showing me the Larimer County requirements, which really are cutting edge. So to have, and I think they're totally appropriate for a rural area, because if you're developing 50% of the land, it doesn't look or feel rural, as we've seen at the Haworth subdivision west of town. But if you have 80% open space and a density based on 2-acre septic lots, 16 lots on 160 acres does feel rural. And as Kurt pointed out, most of the land that we're designing this for, right? I was concerned before about we need to have one standard for Larimer County and one standard for Weld County because the underlying density is so different. But when you really look at this map, there's very little land that's still rural farming land in the Larimer County portion of our map. Almost all of the big farms and the really valuable agriculture we're trying to preserve is in Weld County. And this gives a landowner a huge incentive. It gives the landowner in Weld County a really viable option if they want to keep farming, but take some of the value out of their land, plan for their retirement or develop a lot for their family. Anyway, this gives a Weld County landowner a lot of reason to annex to Berthoud and preserve 80% of their land, and tying the water to the land so that you don't just, they don't do the development and sell all the water, but having water that has to remain on the residual land and provide non-pot for the development. It's cutting edge, and I think that we might not see the impacts of this for 20 or 30 years, but it will have a dramatic impact, and it will meet our goal, I think, of keeping the land between town and I-25 from turning into all subdivisions. So I think it's great, and I appreciate you guys, really figured out a way to incorporate our comments from the last meeting, because I think those were all really good changes. So it really is, it's incredible that, and like you said, Tim, it's amazing how much things have changed in the last 4 years. And I will also give I'll throw that back at you, Kurt and Chris. None of this would have happened if our staff wasn't, taking the board direction and really finding good ways to implement it. And speaking from my first 2 years on the board, staff was not taking board direction or finding innovative ways to, do progressive land use planning. So this is just awesome.
Trustee Grace?
Kind of repeat that one. Town staff has absolutely floored me and impressed me with a lot of this. It's the first time I've been a trustee, but the sheer breadth and depth of knowledge and mastery that you have to make this stuff work and make it approachable it's baffling, honestly. So I guess thank you for getting all this put together. I know, the comp plan, just that little thing was huge, and then all the updates. These updates here are easily 100 pages. And that's not just 100 pages of boilerplate you copied from somewhere else. This is 100 pages that you guys went and sat through with a fine-tooth comb. These details, they're absolutely everything that we're hoping for. So thank you guys. Sincerely, thank you. That's it.
All right. I don't think I need to say anything more. Really impressive work. Good job. Thanks for taking our comments and turning them into something really valuable that will have a long-term impact on the town and really preserve our agricultural heritage. Really appreciate it, guys. You did a great job. All right, with that, would someone like to move?
I move to approve ordinance 1299, an ordinance amending chapter 30, sections 1 through 6 of the Development Code of the Town of Berthoud for the purposes of amending and revising the Development Code.
Second.
All right, Trustee Heinman has made the motion. Trustee Grace is seconding. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Hardy?
Yes.
Trustee Heinman?
Yes.
Trustee Grace?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dower?
Yes. All righty. Okay, thank you very much. appreciate staff's time. Now we can move on to elected official reports. Let's start with Trustee Hardy.
All right. Got a couple things tonight. Snowfest, if you notice, there's no snow.
No.
So we've postponed the sculpting contest to January 11th through the 15th. We'll start making snow hopefully after Christmas and start packing snow on the 10th and start carving on the 11th with final displays on the 15th with everybody coming to the park that day hopefully to see some snow sculptures again. So think snow. We did go ahead and go with the parade, which was well attended. I was very happily surprised to see that. I haven't heard any feedback from any of the businesses yet to see how that's impacted their sales, but I did talk to one or two that were on the street next to me, and they were already thinking that they better hurry back to the shop because they were even surprised to see quite a few people on the street, which is great. So I hope everybody got a little visit from all the people that were down there besides just Santa. So think snow for January. The next thing I noticed that the Justin Bauer banner got torn on the roundabout. I don't know if that was from construction. It was pretty extreme, but I did make a new one, and I was just going to ask to see when that's going to get back up because I noticed it's still down.
I honestly don't know. I do remember that you mentioned to me that you're building a new one. I'd have to ask Josh.
Okay. I dropped off about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, front office, so hope that'll get back up soon. And then my other question is, since we're kind of, we already just talked about thinking snow, but I'm also thinking about spring because we just had that nice discussion in our last thing about pollinator gardens. So I was curious to know if Parks and Rec department has made any changes or plan on making any changes or things that follow our pollinator ordinance that we did a while back to see if they're making any updates or improvements in how they're dealing with pesticide applications and treatments.
I think beyond the memo that Keith provided, I don't know, gosh, however many months ago that was, I don't know if there's been any change in policy.
Okay. It'd be kind of nice to see if the ordinance would carry through to our Parks and Rec department. So I'll just keep checking on that as the year goes on.
I would say that I think we are absolutely consistent with our adopted ordinances.
Okay. I just had some concerns brought my way over the last year or so. So anyway, next thing is historic preservation meeting was last night. We still have one open seat on the committee. So if there's anybody out there still listening, we do have a seat if you're interested in historic homes or have a background in historic preservation. Either one's fine. We'd love to have that seat filled here soon. Just fill out an application, get in contact with Christian Smore at the town office to get involved with that. There's even one up on the website of bertha.org under the historic preservation page. We also discussed creating a yard sign that could be displayed in front of a historic business property or home in the area that has met or exceeded exceptional historic preservation quality. So we're working on getting that done for the summer. We also discussed some improvements that are being made on a home at 338 Massachusetts, which is in Old Town, just a half block west of the railroad station. They have done a lot of nice work to it's the old McCarty doctor's office, and he's really done some really nice work on that. And he's doing some outside work to re-improve all that and get it painted to some historic preservation colors, which would be really nice when it's all completed. Last thing on mine is more of a question. We talked about in the budget tonight. I should have asked it back then, but it kind of skipped my mind until reports came back up. But we discussed working with Wildfire as contracting with the Bertha Rec department. Is that exclusive, or would that also include other arts people in town like Baja or Bertha Dance Studio or anybody else that might be doing some programs that Wildfire doesn't offer?
Our agreement with Wildfire will be exclusive, but we'd be happy to talk to other folks about opportunities they might provide. We work with Baja already on sculptures in Fickle Park, and Wildfire's unique in that it's a nonprofit, right? Not unlike a, private dance studio. But yeah, I mean, we're open to all kinds of ideas.
Okay, just curious, just wasn't sure if it was limited or if it was still kind of a swinging door open there a little bit for them to have opportunity. All right, that's it.
Alrighty. Trustee Grace?
Guess a couple, noticed the trail connection, Bertha Parkway or County Road 17, they finished pouring that concrete, I think, earlier today, possibly last night, but I saw them throwing tarps over it today.
Today.
Yeah, are they gonna go south of Spartan, or did it end at Spartan?
They'll go south of Spartan.
Okay.
We had to work out a deal with the developer. I think if you remember, we talked about this a little bit when you approved the project.
Yep.
The developer, I think, will be close on the heels of us finishing, so we would have rather them pay for it. That's kind of why we held off, because we knew they'd be coming right behind us finishing, but we went ahead and worked it out where we'll build it now and they'll just pay us for it.
All right. And I remember that comment, I remember that specifically was, we brought that up with the question mark of, we don't know when they're gonna develop it, and then literally, as soon as it approved, like 2 weeks later, I see bulldozers out there, so I thought that was nice poetic timing.
Part of the issue with them was that they were modifying their development plan a little bit, and so it's gonna change the alignment slightly. But we were able to kind of do all that in parallel. We've made it work. I actually signed the development agreement with the requirement that they pay us back for the trail construction just a couple days ago.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
That'll save them money, because it'll be more expensive a year from now.
I would assume so. Based on the way things are going.
I believe the skate park that finished up, at least the protective gates around it.
The skate park was officially opened on Monday.
Oh.
We did several social media posts and anyway.
Saw kids out there playing on it today, so.
A lot of excitement.
I mean, I saw them playing on it like a month ago too, but,
Yes. Now we don't have to have the sheriff try to run them off.
Right.
Only for them to come back 10 minutes later.
With 10 more friends.
Yeah. Exactly.
If you build it, they will come.
Yeah. That's it, just notice those two things, appreciate it. Nothing else to report.
Alrighty. Trustee Hyman?
So notice the Crusher Fine trail widening at Wagner Farm Park. That looks awesome. So that's really great that we went back and did that. And I know that was at the Bertha Day booth. Was it Bertha Day? No, at the Farmers Market booth. I know that was a couple of citizens mentioned they really wanted soft surface trails next to the concrete. So it's great that we got that done. The port meeting was on the 1st, a couple weeks ago. Really sneaks up on you when the first Wednesday of the month is the 1st. So anyway, the biggest item that night was a review of the initial draft of the town park plan. And all in all, it was received very favorably. And it's kind of interesting. They got pretty creative and, obviously preserving those ball fields is nostalgic, but not very practical, and they don't function very well with pedestrian or spectators standing in the street watching baseball games. But the way they've done it is really cool, so I'm sure that'll be coming to the board at some point. But the one on the corner, they've actually used the baseball diamond layout for the layout of that corner of the park, which is exactly in the shape and dimensions of the current ball field. And then the southern portion of that, they've created what they call a founder's green, which is really just a big grassy field surrounded by kind of an oval pathway, but there's a veterans memorial at that east edge on 5th Street. So I think that encompasses a lot of what people wanted to see in that area. So I thought that was really creative and looks really nice. The one concern that was brought up, and I think it's a pretty valid concern, is that pickleball is a really noisy sport. And the current pickleball court there was not really planned to be there or envisioned as some sort of a master plan. It was just, we had an old tennis court that we could utilize for pickleball. So, anyway, so one of the neighbors spoke about the constant, like literally sun down, sun up to sundown, constant pickleball, because as we know, there's a lot of demand and we don't have a lot of courts at the moment. So, I don't think he said he had sought professional mental health help, but he kind of alluded to the fact that he was going crazy from the constant. So anyway, so I think that's something we should look really hard at is, and one of the consultants said it was, you really need to look at this and say, is this the right place? Because the plan is to go from 4 current pickleball courts to 6 or 8, I can't remember, but anyway, there was some discussion on that. They didn't really, the port committee didn't really weigh in on that, but Keith did mention that we're gonna have some more pickleball going in at Pioneer Park, potentially in the near future.
Already got that designed and budgeted.
Awesome. Well, so that might be a really good timing, is that one can phase in, but anyway, but that's just something for everybody to be aware of, and I encourage that neighbor who contacted me to talk to other board members, so you might hear from him. And then the last thing is just, it's really hard to hear the Zoom, so, and I like the fact that people can call in and participate, so I think we should continue the hybrid meetings, but I think we need to add a couple speakers here because I could barely hear Kristen, and we haven't gotten a lot of citizen comment in that mode, but I just think we really need a couple speakers here so we can hear.
Or even on our dais, pointing at us.
Yeah.
Well, that, however, but yeah, I don't know if it'd be easier to just add 2 more in the ceiling or what, but yeah, I can't hear up here, so. Anyway, that was it.
Feedback.
Well, I guess last thing is I will just wish everybody happy holidays. I have to say I am counting down, I'm down to single digits on how many meetings are left. And tonight is like, wow, last meeting of the year, so. Yeah.
All right.
Awesome, looking forward to a great Christmas and a great New Year.
Excellent. All right, well, you guys saw the kids from the Birth of Youth Advisory Commission. They're pretty awesome. They did their presentation. I'm glad that we're gonna be supporting them. Tomorrow, they are having a well-deserved end-of-year get-together at the rec center. They're very excited because a lot of these kids don't necessarily have passes. So this is gonna be an opportunity for them to see the rec center and actually get to use it. So, and then, yeah, I have nothing else to report. Staff? Oh, yes.
Same thing, I just forgot. Apparently there's like a red flag warning going on tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. with wind gusts up to 30, 40 miles an hour.
80 miles an hour.
Is that what it was up to?
The most recent forecast is, 80-mile-an-hour gusts tomorrow.
Okay, so just figured, mention it out loud. For you guys over there, good luck.
Yeah. And happy holidays to
Yeah.
everyone, obviously. Yeah. All right, Scott?
Nothing for me tonight, just thanks for a great year and looking forward to 2022.
Yeah.
Excellent. Attorney Smith?
I just thank you all for the pleasure of being able to serve this staff and this board, and wish you all a very safe and happy Christmas and New Year's.
Thank
Awesome.
you. All right, with that, I'll go ahead and adjourn the evening. It is, let's see,
Well, we gotta wait for like 10 more minutes. We gotta get out of here after 10. That's the rule.
No, we get paid by the meeting, not by the hour.
All right, I believe it's 9:48, 9:49.